So welcome everyone to the Village of Cottage Grove Village Board of Trustees meeting on Monday, May 19th, 2025. It is 6:31 p.m., so I'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum and the agenda was properly posted, so we'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so this is the public's appearances, public's opportunity to speak. We have several wish to speak forms, so what we're going to do is have individuals, I'll read off their name, and they can come up to the podium if they wish to speak. Please state your name, your address, and hold your comments to no more than 3 minutes. We'll start with the wish to speak forms, check if there's anyone else in the room, then move to Zoom and see if anyone is on Zoom there, and then double check to make sure that we got everyone electronically as well. So first up is Deb Moran. And you can just push the little speaker guy on there.
Hi, my name is Deb Moran. I live at 310 Bonnie Road here in Cottage Grove, and I'd like to say something about Mark Spahos. I'd like to express my strong support for appointing Mark Spahos to the village trustee position. Mark is a successful local business owner with a solid background in finance and asset management. Through his professional experience, he's developed a deep understanding of budgeting, planning, and making sound decisions that balance long-term value with immediate needs, skills that are highly relevant to the work of our village board. Beyond his professional qualification, Mark has shown a genuine commitment to our community. He is engaged, approachable, and listens to residents' concerns. He's consistently advocated for transparency in our local government, fiscal responsibility, and ensuring that taxpayers' dollars are used wisely and effectively. In the recent April 2025 election, Mark has earned 1,474 votes. That level of support speaks volumes about the confidence many residents have in his ability to serve. While he was not elected, the strong showing reflects a clear public interest in having his voice represented on our board. Appointing Mark would not only bring value, expertise, and a thoughtful perspective to the village board, but it would also help ensure that a significant portion of our community feels heard and represented. I respectfully encourage the board to consider Mark Spahos for this important role. Thank you.
Next up, we have Charles Martin.
My name is Charles Martin. I live at 412 Tiana Court in Cottage Grove, Wisconsin. Good evening to residents and members of the board of Village of Cottage Grove. Again, I'm Chuck Martin. My wife Joan is here with me. We're longtime residents and proud seniors of the village. And we are living on fixed income, and like many of our friends and neighbors, we worry every year about being taxed out of our home. I have served in the military, and both my wife and I have worked all our lives, raised our family here, and hope to spend the remaining years of our life here in this peaceful village, but not having to worry about having basic needs or escalating property taxes. That's why we were grateful when Mark Spahos stepped up and ran for village trustee to save the taxpayers of the village of Cottage Grove. He didn't just run a campaign. He ran on a mission to stand up for people like us, seniors, veterans, who want to stay in their homes that they love. We are here tonight because we want to speak up and support him just as he has supported us. Mark is one of our young members on the American Legion post, and he is always first to show up when there's a job to be done. As the post chaplain, he is a man of faith, compassion, quiet strength. Every year, Mark joins us in planting flags on the graves of our veterans, and I think that's happening this week. And he helps lead our memorial ceremony with heartfelt dedication and pride. He makes it a point to welcome everyone at our events and never hesitates to do the heavy lifting when the job needs to be done and others can't do it. For someone that is self-employed, he always donates his time without hesitation when there is a job and a need to be done. Mark is deeply cared for by our Legion family and by all who like him and know him and get to know him. He's always present and prepared in conversations, respectful in disagreements, and kind to everyone he meets. As we call him, smart as a whip, but he's a businessman. He's very knowledgeable. He is a thoughtful listener, a steady hand, and a natural leader. In our opinion, you won't find anyone more qualified or more genuine to serve the village than Mark. And Mark isn't in this for himself. He's in it for all of the residents, all of us. Thank you. I'd like to leave my comments.
All right. Terry Buenzo.
Hi, I'm Terry Benzo, 806 Stony Hill Lane. Like to express my support for Mark. Obviously, he did well in the election, and his numbers kind of speak for itself. But here's something that's really nice about Mark, and I always looked for this all the time when I was working in government. He's the kind of guy that if you're at a meeting and you disagree and he votes no and you vote yes, he's going to leave it at the door. He's not going to storm out the door like a little child having a hissy fit. You know, he's going to be friends afterwards. That's how you get stuff done constructively. And that's a quality that you don't see enough anymore out there in local government or any level of government. So I like that. And he's wired that way. And that's an asset that he's got. He doesn't have any special projects. I've never heard him talk once about anything that is near and dear to him other than being a good steward of other people's money. And here's one that you'll never hear talked about, especially when there's consultants around. Mark is resistant to sales pitches. And I always look for that. I used to be a purchasing manager. And there's a technique to go at boards. They smell the government money. They get 4 out of 7 to fall for it. Mark won't be one of those. And that is huge for the taxpayers. Okay, and that's all I got.
All right. Wendy.
I'm Wendy Felstead. I live at 817 North Parkview Street. And my neighbor is Janet Oakley. She's here in the last row back there. Janet and I went door to door circulating a petition in support of Mark Spahos. And we collected 32 signatures, which I will submit at the end. And I'd like to read the statement of support that people signed. We, the undersigned, support the appointment of Mark Spahos to the Cottage Grove Village Board. A dedicated 18-year resident, veteran, and community advocate, Mark brings over 30 years of financial and leadership experience. He is committed to common sense solutions, fiscal responsibility, and supporting essential services while easing the burden of rising property taxes. Mark's passion for preserving the character of Cottage Grove and his track record of service make him an outstanding choice to help lead our community forward. And I'll just end by saying Mark was the fourth place finisher in the spring election with 1,474 votes. And I propose that choosing Mark or selecting Mark is electorally defensible. Thank you.
Alex?
Last time I spoke, Lisa was here and I had 3 hours on the clock. So I would
Sorry,
like
it's
my
only 3
3
minutes
hours-
tonight.
I'd like my 3 hours back. No. Alex Justishin, 501 Killian Trail. Echoing many sentiments of the others already. There were 5 running for village trustee. 3 of the positions were filled, but as we know, a 4th opened. Mark campaigned to the village and earned the 4th vote, and in essence earned the 4th open seat at our village board. There are others that have applied for the position, but we need to respect the voters' intent and honor the election process. I want to thank everyone for their interest, everyone that's here, everyone that applied. I encourage them to campaign at the next election, connect with the community, let us learn more about you. In the meantime, for all of us in the room, connect with the board, see if they need help with committees. There's always help that's needed with the committees. Attend meetings, even if you're not on a committee. Stay involved. If not in a position, it's still a great thing to do. So thanks for everyone for coming out. It's awesome. Thank you.
All right, we do have Janet Oakley, who is a village resident at 309 West Parkview Street, registered in support of Mark Spahos' election to the board. We also have John Felstad, who is at 817 North Parkview Street in favor of Mark Spahos, does not wish to speak. And then we have JP Villavicencio.
Good evening, everyone. JPV Vicencio, 702 Wheelbridge Road. I'm here to speak regarding the Bakken Park Playground project. I'm really excited to say, well, I'm excited that this project has come up before the board. As a parent to a child with complex health challenges, it is surprising how much playground equipment and cooperative play spaces are not truly inclusive. We have an opportunity in the village to add probably one of the most comprehensive, inclusive playground spaces in the village, but also within Dane County. And it's really important to say cooperative play is truly inclusive because unlike, say, the Houston project, which has that nice surface that's been proposed in there, there isn't space for like a cooperative play unless they're literally right next to the structure. There's no climbing, no way to get around in there. It's just the surface. This has that cooperative play where kids can be next to one another. My child doesn't have the stamina to climb up or the strength at times, especially when she was little. She couldn't go out and play, even though she really wanted to. She couldn't do it, and thus was not having that interaction with peers because they would just go off on their own. So I'm really excited and I hope you all move forward with that project. But at the same time, also we need to be respectful of the people who've put in so much time, energy, and their money into the current playground that's there. If you've had the opportunity to go and look, there are numerous plaques as well as the big board that shows people who donated their time, energy, and money. In fact, one of my buddies was there and is on that plaque because he spent nights guarding that place when it was being built. So there's members of the community that will put a lot of time and effort into that current playground. And the way that's currently spec'd out, all that would be taken over by this project. So if we do move forward, I also ask that we find a way to honor those who dedicated their time, energy, and money to the current playground project as well. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak? If not, is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak? All right, and I just double checked that we don't have anything else electronically. So we will move on to discuss and consider the minutes from the village board meeting on May 5th. The minutes are linked as a PDF in the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second the motion.
If there's a motion and a second, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Number 6, presentations to the board. So we have a presentation from Amanda, who's with Baker Tilly, regarding the village's 2024 audited financial statements. So I'll invite Amanda up. You can stand or sit. Whatever you
I can
prefer.
stand. All right. Okay, so, yes, I'm Amanda Blomberg with Baker Tilly. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'll try to be brief and go over some of the financial information that was included in the financial statements. You'll see a few documents that might have been included in your packet, including the financial statements for 2024, as well as an audit results document that has some information about internal controls, upcoming reporting standards, any recommendations that we would have had during the audit as well. So, but what I'll be talking about is just a high-level financial summary of what is in those financial statements. They're pretty complex, pretty long, and this is, you know, the types of things that we think you need to know as a board. If you want to go to the next page. This first graph talks about general fund's fund balance, and so the general fund is the main operating fund of the village, as you probably know. Fund balance is its equity, so it's assets minus liabilities, whatever's left over, to be used for future costs or as reserves for something that would come up. In the middle of the page, there's a summarized income statement of that general fund, and the actual net income or revenues exceeded expenditures by about $429,000 for 24. The budget was balanced, and so it was expected to, you know, be about a zero one way or the other, and the amount actually went up a little bit of that $429,000. If we look at the chart above on the top of that page, you'll see fund balance is divided up into different categories, and it really is just based on how spendable those funds are. Are they available to use to pay your current bills? So our total fund balance went up that $429,000. Our assigned and non-spendable fund balances, so non-spendable, we can't spend, and are assigned, which is usually related to the payment in lieu of tax that the general fund gets from the water utility, remained relatively stable when we compare those numbers to 2023. So most of that net income for the year did drop to that unassigned balance. So you'll see how those bars are looking in comparison to prior year, and you'll see that most of that income did go to that unassigned. That is the most liquid reserves that you have on hand, so they're able to be used essentially to pay current bills as of the end of 24. If we go to the next page, this is a graph of fund balance and how it compares to your annual budgeted expenditures over the course of time. So over the last 5 years, if we look at that unassigned and the assigned categories that we saw on the previous page, and we add those up and we compare them to your budgeted expenditures, we get this ratio that you'll see in the red line there. And so that ratio has kind of started out back in 2020 around that 40% mark and has kind of come down to that 30% mark over the last couple of years. The village has a policy where we want to try to get those percentages in between 20 and 30%. So you'll see that in 24, that did come down to be, you know, right within that policy or that goal of 28%. So fund balance, you know, it really has hit the goals that you're looking for. We are generating some fund balance. We're inside that fund balance policy that the village has set as well. Any questions on fund balance?
Yes, I got a question on this. So the trend is down. We're below the threshold target of 30%. Does that represent, is that concerning? I mean, obviously the median is, you know, 9 or 10 points higher, right?
Yeah, I mean, your goal is 20 to 30%. So you're right within your range, the top end of that range where you want to be. And 30% is a good number to be at. It's no concerns there.
Pete, I just want to mention something too. 2024, we had a unique both revenue and expenditure, which was the Amazon permit. So if we kind of take a step back, what our budgeted expenditures were, our budgeted expenditures were 8.4 million, or almost 8.5 million. Our 2025 total general fund expenditures are actually less than that. It's about 7.1. So artificially, if we're looking at percentage of 2025, we're closer to 35%. So doing much better than the graph is presenting.
Okay, thanks, Cameron. I mean, the trend obviously makes you kind of question, but that totally makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Can I just ask one follow-up on that? So it's the money coming in and going out, like it's a wash for us on the permit because the permit is just like we issue the permit and take in the money and then pay for the inspections and such.
Yep, so when we issue a permit, there's a cost. It's not the total cost of the permit, but the village maintains a small portion to take care of the systems in order to keep track of the permits into perpetuity. And then, yes, that goes out, and that's typically a monthly expenditure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that insight. The next page will go to general obligation debt, page 3. And general obligation debt is the part or the borrowing that the village does that's secured by the tax levy. And so there are limitations as far as how much GO debt can be outstanding, and that equals the 5% of a municipality's equalized value. So what this chart is showing us is what is that debt limit over the last 5 years, and you'll see that represented by that black line. So obviously equalized value generally goes up on an annual basis, some years more than others. So you'll see there was a bit of a hike between 22 and 23, and you probably will expect some more as development finalizes and gets on the tax roll. But that equalized value goes up over time, so then your debt limit also goes up over time. But the amount of debt outstanding is represented by that red line. And so when you compare those two, how much debt do we have compared to our limit? At the end of 24, you were at 47%. That is kind of, went, last year was around 38, the year before was around 46%. So anything under 50%, you're doing really well. There's no concerns there. And what I would also add in your case is a lot of the GO debt outstanding, and I don't have an exact number, is related to your TIF district. So it's the TIFs really being responsible for paying those back versus your general tax levy. You'll see a chart here or a table here at the bottom of the total debt outstanding by type. So you'll see that the village and utility both have some GO debt outstanding, and the utilities also have revenue debt outstanding. All right, next page. This is looking at debt service. So again, talking about debt, how much are we paying in principal and interest compared to our expenditures on an annual basis? So again, this is another ratio to look at, well, how much of our budget is really going to pay off our debt? So you'll see over the last 5 years, it's generally ranged between 20 to 25%. That's about where we would expect to see it. And just, to bring that TIF perspective back in there, about 70% of principal and interest that was paid in 24 was related to TIF-related debt. So, it's not... what we see here is fine as it is, and then when you consider that TIF portion, that brings that percentage down a lot lower. So really what the village is levying to pay back in debt services is pretty low. Any questions on the debt?
Amanda, I do want to just point out on the last slide, the Wisconsin Policy Forum collects all this data from all the municipalities in the state, which is really helpful when you're comparing apples to apples. So there is a link in this document that's in the agenda. I highly encourage the board and the public to take a look at that. At a future meeting, we're going to bring back some tables just on Dane County of that information just to present to the board to get an idea of where we're at overall.
All right. We could move on to the utilities. Page 5 summarizes the results of the water utility. As you know, that's regulated by the PSC, and you have established rates intended to earn a certain rate of return. So last year, our actual rate of return was about 1.24%, and this year it was 5.74%. And that relates to a pretty substantial rate increase to help generate those funds and ensure that our revenues can still exceed our expenses for the year. And so you'll see that information in the operating results chart here, where the blue represents the revenues coming in from user charges, and the black is really what what are our expenses to operate the water utility. That doesn't include like your debt payment or anything like that. It's more operations and maintenance. So we obviously want to be able to have some space in between those lines. We want to generate an operating income so that that income can be used to, further invest into the system. And that's what that rate of return is intended to do. You'll see some other information down towards underneath that chart about unrestricted reserves. This is really just a factor of how much cash that is available to the water utility that's on hand at the end of each year. So you'll see that over time. And at the end of 24, there's about 1.8 million, which means you have almost 11 months of essentially revenue generation on hand at the end of the year. And then the investment in capital really just represents how much of the water plant, your buildings, your distribution mains, wells and pumps and all of that, how much is funded by your equity versus how much is funded by debt at that current time, and you're at about an 80-20 split there. Anything above 50-50 is in good shape.
Just want to put an expectation. So let's fast forward a year from now. The water utility is funding roughly a $600,000 project with cash instead of debt. So as this balance has built up, it has generated enough cash to put that money, instead of taking out debt, spending cash on it. Depending on the size of the project, so there's a couple projects that are coming up that we will be forced to take that out for, just due to the sheer size of the projects. But when we're able to and we start to see this number creep up, that's when we cash fund the projects that we're able to.
All right, and then the last page is kind of the same information for the sewer utility. No PSC regulation there, so we don't have a rate of return calculated, but you'll see where the operating income isn't quite as significant compared to the operating expenses. They're a little bit closer together, even right on top of each other, basically, for 2024. At the beginning of 24, there was a small rate increase, and then there's a more significant rate increase going in that went into effect at the beginning of 25. So hopefully that widens that gap a little bit. The unrestricted reserves, so again, how much cash do we have on hand? We're sitting at about $3 million, which is about 13 months of revenues on hand. And then the investment in the capital is sitting at a 78-22 split. So very similar to the water utility in that regard.
So kind of, if I look at this, I kind of look at, why did the gap close so aggressively? The last several years, our MMSD charges have increased pretty substantially. If you remember the tax insert, there's a little explanation over the last 3 years. I think it was roughly a 25% increase, while we only increased our rates 5%. So as of January 1, 2025, there was a 10% increase. Again, the months on hand calculation here is a little misleading. We have our biggest bill on a quarterly basis. So we had a large amount of cash go out the door at the end of January related to those quarterly MMSD charges. So that's roughly $300,000. Additionally, there are some cash-funded capital projects that would reduce that number further. I expect that number to be somewhere around 8 to 8.5 next year at this time.
That's a summary of the financial information. Are there any other questions?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, I'd like to just, if you have any questions as you go through the financial statements or the audit results letter, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer questions, but thank the village staff on putting together a good set of financial data for the audit each year. It goes really well and attention to that detail. So thank you.
Thank you for coming, Amanda. Cameron, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, just, so one of the things, kind of just touching base on reserves again, that is a metric that we have been really closely monitoring. There is a little bit kind of uncertainty with economic times over the last year to 2 years. So we have been very conservative as from the percentage and dollar amount of reserves. As things are starting to stabilize to some extent, there might be some ability to transfer some funds either to the capital projects fund or debt service fund to help reduce the impact of taxes. If you guys remember that FMP that was presented that had the two options, option one did represent there was a small levy limit gap in 2026 based off of what we're able to levy compared to what predicted expenditures are, and then that gap doesn't appear until 2031. That was roughly 60,000 in that, so that it could be a potential for a one-year plug to use in that instance. We're really gonna take a look at that here for the next couple of months as we lead into budget cycle, get a good prediction at where we're gonna end up for 2025 with ultimately a recommendation for what to do, either spending down reserves or present the balanced budget again. Thank you.
We'll move on to unfinished business interview for the open village trustee position with the 5 gentlemen who have put in their application for interviews. So I'd like to invite them up, have a seat up by a microphone. This decision process from the village board was made 2 meetings ago to hold an interview process like has been done for the last 2 appointees. We have, as trustees, submitted questions. I have a couple of intro questions, and then I'd invite the trustees to ask their own question if they'd like, or if you'd like me to ask them, I can just be I'll ask the questions. There are 3 questions from the submissions that were very similar in nature, and I know that staff has sent an email out with my suggestion to consolidate just for efficiency purposes, because I know this is the main event that everyone is all excited about, but we don't want to be here all night. If that's okay with the village board to consolidate that one question, we'll do that. All right. So we have a list of questions. I am going to ask that you try and keep your answers, try very hard, to 2 minutes in length. So again, we're not here until midnight. And I'm going to probably just start at this end, and we'll work our way down. And then for the next question, we'll start with number 2 and work our way around, just so that we can keep it randomized, if that's okay with everyone. Are there any comments from board members before we get started? Okay. So welcome and thank you for putting in your application. Can you please state your name, your occupation, how long you've lived in the village, maybe any other information you'd like us to know?
Hi, my name is Chuck Pellymunner. I've lived here a little over 40 years in the area. In the village for the last 5, after I built in West Lawn. I'm retired. I retired in 2021. I have no specific agenda for anything. I just have time on my hands being retired and wanted to serve the community in any capacity possible. So, this seemed like a good opportunity just to learn, listen, and be as practical as possible in submitting interest for joining you in this effort.
I am Eric Brown at 426 Nightingale Lane. I have been a resident for just over 10 years, and I have a passion for serving people in the community. That is why I am running tonight for the open seat. Thank you.
My name is Mark Spahos. I ran for this trustee position. I live at 242 Cottage Grove, Chateau Drive. I'm nervous. Oh my God, am I nervous? Anyway, 242 Chateau Drive, Cottage Grove. I've been here for 18 years. My wife and I have moved here chaplain for the American Legion. I'm excited about the opportunity to serve on the board because I think I can bring value. I think I can bring real value that will help this village, not now, but into the future, and potentially now too. And that's it.
Hi there, my name's John Williams. I've been a resident here of just over 22 years at 504 Wheelbridge Road. This is where my family has been central, the village has, to their growing up and getting involved, and we've really appreciated all that Cottage Grove has to offer. I believe in giving back. As far as occupation, I am director of a large organization that does risk management and governance in the pharmaceutical industry, and have about 30 years of experience doing that overall.
Good evening again. Dr. J.P. Vicencio, 702 Wheelbridge Road. I've been a resident in the village for 4 years now. I am a higher educational professional. Due to state rules, I cannot say exactly as part of this interview process of where I work, but I am a higher educational professional. I've been for over a decade. I'm interested in running for this position over the past year, where I interviewed for the previous opening as well as a candidate in this past election, because I truly value giving back. My family's had a history of being part of village boards, and I've seen it up close. My mom in particular has been on her board for decades, so I know exactly what I'm getting into, and it gets me excited because this is where you can really work to serve your fellow neighbors and help make informed decisions. For me in particular, one of my skill sets that I feel I would bring forward is that data-informed decision-making, asking those questions, doing the quantitative and qualitative research. I also have experience writing grants as well, so looking for ways to find additional funding, outside funding, to help offset some of the expenses that the village is potentially incurring in the near future.
All right. Move on. Eric, you're up first for this one. This is Trustee Severson's question. What do you believe are the top 3 issues currently facing the village of Cottage Grove, and how would you propose addressing each of them if appointed to the village board?
Thank you. Top 3 issues that come to my mind are public safety, affordable housing, and building a stronger community. I think the ways to accomplish that are by, first and foremost, serving the people, not just serving your own interests, but serving the interests of the community, listening to what the community needs, what they want, and trying to build a consensus and move forward with a plan. Put a plan in place, use the plans that are in place to make policy and make this an invitable place to live, make this an affordable place to live, and a safe and great place to live and raise your family. Thank you.
I believe after talking to a ton of residents in the community during the campaign, the 3 top priorities of the community of the board right now: police, fire, and Amazon. We need a new police station. I've attended the welcoming of, check out the architectural plans, the $1.95 million architectural plans. They weren't done in haste. They were well planned out. What that actual means in final cost, I have no idea. The board's going to have to work through that. While I believe personally that we do need a new police station, I don't believe it should be a $23 million police station. I believe that the residents have other priorities, such as a fire department that needs at least an $800,000 roof. In the near future, we're going to be looking at a fire department that's volunteer that won't be able to sustain the current demands that are being called upon it. The natural progression would go to a pay-for-service. You call an ambulance, you have a fire, the resident or developer management team, whoever it is, the owner of the property, would then pay for that service. After that, it comes down to hiring a union fire department. It's not cheap. In my limited research, we're talking $750,000 to $1 million per individual on the police department, certified fire individual. And with that being the case, we would probably need, and that's just my best estimate, I'm not the one to, you can't take this as fact, just based on what I've, with limited research, about 24 full-time firemen. It's $24 million just rounding up. If I'm off 10, 20%, that's still over $15 million. So not only are we looking at a need immediately for a police station that's already been in the process, earlier boards have worked through the process. I do believe that we're gonna need a new police station. I don't know what that's gonna look like. I don't believe it should be $23 million. In addition, the fire department, I've mentioned the roof. I've mentioned the natural progression we're gonna be looking at, I believe, in the next several years, maybe 5, 6 years, maybe even a little bit longer than that. Our firefighters do a great job. They're very dedicated to what they do, and they love their community. At a certain point, we may need more coverage than our volunteers can actually provide. Amazon. I used to work in Oak Creek. I was the vice president of a transportation company in Oak Creek. We handled drayage, meaning we handled 174 semis on a daily basis pulling drayage, which would be containers coming from the West Coast into the state of Wisconsin. We were located close to where Amazon was being developed. No different than they're being developed up by me on the north side of Cottage Grove. If I was appointed to the board, I would make a motion that 2 board members attend every meeting that Amazon has, because when Amazon gets involved, the state gets involved, the county gets involved, and they should be, but the village of Cottage Grove is carrying a big burden and allowing for about, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, about $45 million in tax breaks that they're going to get. For that, we need to make sure that we have a voice at these meetings. Amazon doesn't just donate once $150,000 to youth or a library project. They want things to go smooth. They want to be an asset to the community, and they will be, and they are. But there are other opportunities where there may be funds available to help our village. And if we have someone from the village board, I would suggest Cindy, as the president, be one of those 2 individuals. Oh, 2 minutes?
Yeah.
That's a start to what I think.
Thanks. John?
Top 3 things, I think, it's already been said. Safety services, certainly. Providing basic services and expanding upon those as we continue to grow, and continue to fostering a welcoming community here. That's what I found over the years, from way back when, 22 years ago to now. I think that's been a really gem of this community, and it's found out in surveys as well. In order to get these services planned out, the board here needs to go through and continues to do and has done, planning out over the years. What is that going to cost us, in a fashion that doesn't, overburden the taxpayers as well. And so you can, chip away at those things as we continue to grow. That's the nice thing about growth, is it does allow us to provide additional items to the community along the way. So that's what I have for my 3 things. Thank you.
Okay. For me, as has been said before, fire EMS, the safety services is one of the big parts in there. And really for that is making sure they're set up for success. I think not many people are aware that between 90 and 95% of fire departments in the state of Wisconsin are volunteer-based. Across the nation, leaders in the fire, but also EMS, but in particular fire, stated that, and I quote, "It's a national pandemic," in that they are not getting enough people to volunteer. So we're seeing that here in our community. So the story is the same across the board. One of the things we can do is look at the newly approved apprenticeship programs to really focus on both the youth, K-12, bring people into the department, but also other apprenticeship programs, no matter what someone's background, train them up to get them into the position. There's contracts around it, and it's about a year old for those programs. I think affordable and diverse housing is another key part in there. We've heard from members of the community here talking about affordability, but also providing those different housing types so that no matter what position, life stage you are in, you have a place to stay in the village and stay in the village with that. And then kind of tied to a debt. So police station is one of the big ones in there, but other capital projects across the board. we heard we're in a really good financial state, but there are other big projects down the line. So what can we do to really ensure that we're staying in the good spot and have a strategic plan regarding that moving forward?
Well, I've heard a lot about safety and, public policing, and wholeheartedly support that consideration, as I'm sure everybody with common sense here does. As far as other challenges for the community, I think property taxes are, of course, the easy button that everybody mentions. But if we invest appropriately to grow the community, and I think it's done a pretty good job to date. I mean, I've lived here over 40 years. I appreciate this village. I think there's a lot of positives, and we don't want to break it. So, the development that is ongoing is also appreciated for affordable housing. I think that's an important point. But one thing I haven't heard mentioned is, and I don't know how sensitive this might be in this forum, but better cooperation between the township and village. I don't know what has transgressed over decades to create any difficulties in that regard, but I think it would make the overall community an improved place, and maybe there is some sort of cooperation. I just am not aware of it. But some avenue to ensure cooperation between the village and township, I think, would be beneficial to everybody.
We've heard housing mentioned by everyone. So Cottage Grove, Dane County, and Wisconsin as a whole are facing a housing shortage. What can Cottage Grove do to build more housing to address the shortage and lower housing costs for families and seniors? 3, Mark.
Question of clarification. I hear affordable housing all the time. I've heard affordable housing with the Heyday project that started at $2,800 for a 2-bedroom. I've heard affordable housing at $1,800 a unit at Authentics and Glen Grove and where the bakery, Grace Coffee is. What do we consider affordable housing?
I think we're not going to have a back and forth dialogue.
Okay,
but,
well, I'll put it like this.
Yeah.
So in order to, I believe that our village has a great deal of apartment complexes for rent. We have homes for rent. When we came to this village, my wife and I, we came here to invest. And I think with the federal programs, the HUD programs, individuals, whether they be military veterans or individuals in certain pay grades, what they make annually, they have the ability to get breaks on down payments. So instead of having to pay for apartments and rent, where in the end they have nothing, they have the opportunity of ownership, single-family home ownership in the village of Cottage Grove. We have a lot of land, and that land is our greatest resource. We can fill it up with really dense, multi-unit family apartments. We already have those. They're not full. Will they be? Yes, but they're not right now. Heyday's coming. The missing middle housing that's referred to in Dane County, that's exactly what that was supposed to target. I say now that going forward, single-family homes that are affordable, if we can get a developer to develop single-family homes, and we can, as a village, put together a program, maybe with Summit Credit Union, because Summit Credit Union helps people when they need help with getting down payments. We have 2 other organizations here that can help, WIDA. We have the opportunity to help people to get into homes and not only set them up with a place to live, but to set them up for success so they're now investing in something that will give them a future. And a future that started here because of a decision on our board to actually give them that chance. And that's what I would like to focus on when we talk about affordable housing. I think it's a great opportunity. When I heard about Lakewood, I thought that would be outstanding because we have a lot of single-family homes there. A lot of opportunity for people to purchase. So that's my thought.
Affordable housing in its context is a challenge, I think, across the nation. Clearly in Wisconsin, I think it's the last thing I saw from the league was 120,000 units short in the state for folks to live in. The village has taken steps, from my experience, with the Housing Task Force and in partnering with Dane County along the way, and continue to right now in doing that. And again, diversification of the housing units continues to free up other housing units that are existing currently today, so someone can get into that, maybe an older home that they can work on over the time, as well as certainly rental properties. So young professionals or young folks that are, or even people that want to downsize, have that option. And so we just continue that mix of housing stock within the village, and that also requires partnering with developers too. And I think in the past, the village has done a really good job at doing this. So that's how you do it. There's no easy button. There's no magic thing that can happen overnight. It's a matter of consistently working at it with a plan, and I think the village already has that in place.
Not to echo John, but I completely agree in that that partnership with Dane County in the village is going to go a long way to help address that. John mentioned across the state, we're seeing that here in Dane County, and that housing study shows that we are tens of thousands of units short, and the movement is going out further and further in within the county, so outside of Madison. And so what that really means is that we got to find ways to continue that mix, because we can't be all single family. That allows residents who want to be here to stay here at any stage of their life. That also has the benefit of making our housing market more strong, stable, and help maintain owners' value in the home. That's what the research has shown, is what economics studies have shown, is that if you have that diverse mix, your housing values are actually going to be higher, because that allows the housing to turn over and keep people in those various stages. So what that really means for us is, yeah, we have the housing committee and keeping the work that's going on there. But also, as John mentioned, we have to find ways to make the village of Cottage Grove attractive to developers. And that means, one, showing that we're open for that. So within the village board, but also in the plan commission, the housing committee, showing that we're willing to work with developers, taking those steps. Showing that we're open to have diverse housing types, whether it is that single family, whether it's the missing middle, or if there's other affordable housing opportunities there. Working with them to show that we can do it within the framework that we already have with that comprehensive plan, development plan in there. And so by showing that we're attractive doesn't mean financing. There's other ways we can go about that as well. But I think the key part here is working with developers, having those conversations, and showing that we're willing to listen and hear them, and hear the potential opportunities that are there.
I agree with everything that I've heard so far up here from everyone else in regards to enticing developers to have some interest in continuing to promote this village and ensure that there is mixed housing for, those that can't afford single-family homes. Maybe eventually they will be able to, and they'll love living here, which is a strong reason for them to buy a single-family home once they can afford it. So, I think the developer angle is clearly something I think you've already been interested to some degree in working with, and it's gone well to date, but continue the progress.
Dane County is growing. Everybody knows that. And with that comes less than affordable housing. What we really should do is follow the plan that I hear is in place and promote growth here in Cottage Grove. And not just housing growth, but try to attract businesses, because if people know that they can buy here, they'll spend more here. And then it'll make living here more attractive and add to our tax base. Thank you.
All right, going on to Trustee Murphy's question. What do you see as the primary responsibilities as a board member? John.
Having been a board member for 10 years, I think it comes down to listening to both your fellow board members, listening on those committees, being involved in them, and then getting out and talking to constituents and seeing what they have to say and getting their thoughts. And then hopefully, moving that back through, to the board and sharing that. I think it's that simple.
I think, well, there's a lot of good responsibilities that individuals on the board would hold. I think some of the bigger ones, as John has mentioned, is listening across the board to not only the residents, but also fellow board members, but also our staff. And one of the things that I would say is also empower our staff. We have some experts in the room that we've hired for a reason, and they're doing a lot of the research and kind of the conversations on our behalf. So what can we do to help empower them, support them in the work that they do? Be advocates for various constituent groups and our residents. We hear each individual has their own passions and their own priorities in here. And there's some that we need to bubble up a little bit more and hear from. And so being advocates on their behalf. But also, again, the key part is balancing everything so that at the end of the day, we have equitable, inclusive community that we all are proud of that also meets our values that we've laid out.
I think one of the major responsibilities is to listen. Listen. Hear what everybody in the community, has to say. Be a voice for all. Local government has the most direct impact on people's lives of all government, all levels. And it's incredibly critical, and for that reason, I think it's an honored, sanctified position that should be taken that way. And so I would treat it with the respect it deserves.
Comes down to basically just three key points. Listen, collaborate, and serve your community. Beyond that, I think we're lucky in local government here that we don't have political labels when you run for office. You're running as an individual whose purpose is to serve the community. So if you can advocate for not only yourself and interests that you're passionate about, but ideas that other people are passionate about, from the littlest person in Cottage Grove to the biggest person, then you're giving a voice to everybody here on the board, and we can move forward as a community, not just different factions, but we can move forward as a whole community. And I think that is what I would want to do if I was elected to this board.
Not sure whose question that was, but it's an excellent question. When I ran for the board, I had to think, okay, what are my responsibilities going to be? So this is a great question. First of all, I think it's the responsibility of the village board members, the fiscal responsibility for the taxpayers' dollars, every single one of them. It comes down to approving budgets, taking out waste, placing essential services ahead of other services to make sure that they're covered first, limiting debt. We're in a great place right now. Depending on how much a police station costs, if we get hit by a tornado, we don't know what's going to happen. But the village right now is in a very calm place financially. It may not have been that way. There were some different outcomes, but we are, so that's great. Job of a trustee, I believe, is to create laws, rules, codes, ordinances. And one thing that I think we need to do, if I was to be on the board, is create a way to enforce those codes, those laws. Listening to constituents. I saw that firsthand while campaigning. I listened to as many as I could. Provide transparency. A lot of our residents, I didn't know, I didn't understand. I think we can do a better job. Land use. Our greatest asset in the village of Cottage Grove is our land. Heidi, when we were campaigning up at the Glacial Drumlin with the assisted living, independent living, she had 5 pages of things that she was passionate about, all tied to parks, recreation, and our land. Whether we're developing new homes, whether we're developing new business, Our land is our greatest asset, and as a board member, I would take that to heart and put that as a high priority. Supporting staff. You want to inspect when you expect. I was a 75 Bravo personal administrator for the U.S. military. I managed people, I managed payroll, I managed all the HR functions. I would want to hear from all of our employees to see if they're happy in their jobs, if they feel fulfilled. Are they looking for additional training? Do they think they're being paid fairly? And take a look, how are they being paid compared to everybody else in similar positions across the state? I have no idea. But we want to set the standard in Cottage Grove. We don't want to be someone behind. We don't want to lose quality people to other organizations, other villages, other cities, because we didn't pay enough. We were under what they should be paid. Finally, collaboration. There's an opportunity for collaboration with everybody in the room, within families, within churches, within everything we do, workplace. But it's most important on the board because the collaboration on the board is the backbone of what supports our community and the taxpayers that vote for all of us. And that's what I feel the responsibilities of a true trustee would be.
Multiple studies have shown that there is significant amount of economic and service leakage and that residents frequently leave the community to meet their needs. What would be your plan to improve and expand local services, business, and amenities so that residents can live more fully within the community they pay taxes in?
I believe that's me first,
Yes.
right? Yep, okay. So I think one of the big things in there is finding, well, one, doing the research to figure out what people are leaving for. But tied to that is like, and the inverse of it, what can we do to attract those services or build those services up so that people can stay here in the village, Cottage Grove first? And so with that, a lot of it's all tied to the economic development, whether it's having more housing here, which will attract businesses. Because businesses are looking for the number of roofs in here. That's one of the main things they look for before coming in. Same time is balancing what those priorities and those needs are. So some of the services are things that we as a village can provide. Maybe it's time for us to figure out why that is we're not offering it, and is it a priority? And then balance out those various needs. So for me, it's really trying to find out the answers to those questions, but then also providing those opportunities so that people can stay here within the village. Again, it's that Cottage Grove first mentality. We would much rather have people stay here, and because we have that charm, I think people want to stay here. But what I'm hearing is that we don't have the services they need, so that's why they're going elsewhere.
I think if we can promote an identity for the village that's attractive and offers beautiful parks, offers all other amenities such as, a community gathering space, if we can promote that concept, I think we can build an identity that makes people want to stay. I think most of the people I've met in Cottage Grove already want to stay, but we can always improve. And I think having kind of a village identity, I don't want to create a funny slogan over it or anything. I don't think that's necessary. But I hope you grasp the concept I'm trying to convey, that if we make this a desirable place to live for families of all incomes and ages, I'll represent the seniors in the group, then I think it would be a positive place.
Continuing to promote growth here in Cottage Grove, more homes, bringing in businesses so that people do want to spend time here, do want to come here and spend money here. Those who live here spend money here so that we can build up our resources and we can deliver on more resources so that community members feel even better about spending time here, living here, and continuing to live here, and attracting, again, more residents to come here. We have a great opportunity to do so because, like we already know, Dane County is growing. So we have an opportunity to grow our tax base and the services we deliver by emphasizing growth, by promoting growth and promoting reasons to reside here and spend our money here. Thank you.
We have an outstanding Chamber of Commerce. They're funded by 8% room tax coming out of the Comfort Inn primarily, equates to about $90,000 a year. It's not enough to promote a village, but it's a start. I believe the village did a great thing by not reducing that tax at the one of the last two meetings. That hotel is doing a great job now with all the construction people coming in to serve building the Amazon project. But with $90,000 a year, we're giving that to the chamber, who's then turning it over to our team of people that are promoting Cottage Grove, tourism, if you will. I think that's a great start, like I said, but in order to incent business, we have to go after the business. We have to talk to business owners. Generac just built a new building down on High 94. Not even sure exactly where it is. But if we can go, and I know several business owners that I could talk to as an individual that I've called on before, know them personally. I've talked to some restaurant owners in different communities that I've already talked to that would have interest in coming to Cottage Grove. Two things concern them. Can I trust the board? Yeah. And number two, your taxes are pretty darn high. They're up there with Wanakee. When I talk to people about what kind of business should we bring into Cottage Grove, I think we need to look at light industrial, assembly. Amazon is a great example of what warehousing can do. I would guess right now that the county of Dane, the state of Wisconsin are talking with business owners that are big warehouses outside of the state to put additional warehousing in next to the property where Amazon is to support the Amazon project. We should be doing that. We should be reaching out to people and targeting those businesses. Don't wait for them to come to us, because I guarantee you there are other people going after them right now. And not just because we have Amazon, there are villages and cities all over the country going after businesses trying to get them to come to their community. Amazon gives them a reason. It's a reason unlike any other. We're the single largest distribution center in the state, only to Oak Creek. And if you drive over to Oak Creek, where I used to work, and you look around Amazon, all you see are warehouses filled with businesses, startups that are not big enough to put their product directly into the Amazon supply chain. So what do? They warehouse next to Amazon so they can get the same transit times. They take orders, they deliver it at the end of the week, Amazon gets it out in 2 days. There are a lot of opportunity in this community that I don't think a lot of us are even aware of, and I'm naive to a lot of it too, because I've been out of the supply chain game for quite some time. But I do know business owners, some of the largest in the state. I'm willing to talk to them to see if they would be willing to come to Cottage Grove. I know supply chain logistics like the back of my hand, and that is the backbone of what makes Amazon tick. If we can add value to Amazon by bringing other businesses around them, it's a win-win for everybody, and then everybody wins in the village, and we look like heroes. Even if we bring in one warehouse and call it a $20 million project, there's no additional services needed. We don't have to chase fire alarms in the middle of the night. We can just get the taxes, because all their job is to do is to fill the Amazon warehouse with somebody's product. And that's all I have.
I think everybody said it all almost, which is great comments, I think, from all of us. I would just echo on being easy to work with as a board or staff, et cetera. And I think that's been the case in the past, and I think and hope it continues to be the case. Certainly marketing, communicating what we currently have within the village, making sure people know what we have within the village. And then again, circling back to understanding where we have opportunities and looking out for those to fill those needs that people want. That's all.
All right, this is the last question. It's a long one. So, serving on the village board often requires balancing diverse perspectives, professional input, and legal responsibilities while upholding the public interest. Can you describe a time you were part of a group with strong differences of opinion and how you approached collaboration and decision-making, particularly when staff recommendations differed from public viewpoints? How do you navigate situations where your personal beliefs or relationships might conflict with ordinances, expert input, or the broader needs of the community? I'm happy to repeat if necessary. I think we'll just start with Chuck at the end here.
Yeah, why not?
Just repeat it back to me, and then you can go.
In English?
Yes.
I was a manager for a Fortune 500 IT company for 40 years. I worked there. I was a manager the last 20. So I handled a group of 20 engineers across the United States. Not all of them used English as their primary language, as I'm sure you can understand if you've ever been close to IT. So clearly there was occasionally cultural clashes and differences of opinions. However, at the end of the day, I was fortunate because we kind of worked in an industry that relied a lot on science and facts. So there wasn't as much room for opinion. However, everyone's still human. So I always had to find it kind of interesting. There was all these incredibly brilliant people that I would work with and manage, and sometimes they would get really riled up over the most simplest things that really had no effect at the end of the day. So, as a manager of the team, it was critical that I got everybody to work together, and we did very successfully. That's why I was able to maintain a career for as long as I did, even through a lot of layoffs in the IT industry after the dot-com bust, and it continues to this day, actually. But I think listening is critical key, and allowing everyone to have a voice and respecting their voices, and don't jump to conclusions. Everything's not always as it first appears. I don't know if that in any way addresses such a long question, but that's what I got.
I have served and continue to serve on volunteer boards, one of them being my condo association board, HOA board, and there are often disagreements on how to proceed, how to take care of issues, whether it's financial, building issues. And as it's been brought up a lot tonight, listening is important. Taking feedback, criticism is important, knowing how to respectfully disagree with someone, knowing how to talk with people, collaborate, and try to come to some solution that will work to move forward is important, and to remain professional, not get into just name calling and negative behavior, but trying to remain professional, not try to take criticisms personally, because we all have the same interest in, for us on the board, it is to serve the community. So as long as people are doing that, and everyone has that same base level understanding, then you can try to do what's best for the community. So listening, knowing how to collaborate, knowing how to talk with people are all very important skills, not just for being on volunteer boards, but for being on a village board. Thank you.
All right. I think a good example that would relate to the village board is the numerous examples of going through the budget cycle as a village board member over the years. There are a whole host of great ideas and things that we, as a board, you'd love to commit to and do, but you're always challenged by both the capital side or both, or the operating side. And to collaborate with your colleagues and disagree and come together and finally vote on that board, on that budget for that particular year, while managing, on the backside, thinking of the property impact to the residents, I think is both a great achievement for this board and other boards within the county, and kind of proud of going through that process with various board members over the years.
The best way, I think, for me to answer this very large question is to give an example. I was the personal administrator. 75 Bravo was my MOS. It's the military occupational specialty for the first of the 147th Aviation Attack Helicopters out at Truax. I came to the, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Kerry Alsobrook. He was then promoted to Brigadier General of the whole entire American Army National Guard in the state of Wisconsin. After about a year with the unit, I was called into a committee to be, well, I was called in by the lieutenant colonel to serve on a committee. I was the lowest ranking person in the room. I was a private first class. I was surrounded by 3 different officers, a sergeant and a staff sergeant, and me. And the goal was, to talk about retention within our unit. It was back in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. There was a high likelihood we were going to be mobilized and taken over to the desert. Helicopters were in great need back then. So retention was big. We didn't have to worry about flight ops and the pilots. They had long-term contracts. They were 20-year people. The people that supported them, myself and the sheet metal shop and the engine shop and all these different support areas, had people that were going to be contracting out, meaning they were going to be leaving the military. Our commander came in, tasked everybody with, I don't want to lose another person. We're going to be mobilized probably in the next 6 months. I want a plan. So immediately the officers, because they're ranking, they're the most trained, they start arguing. And I'm just sat back, I'm like, whoa. So they start arguing about, we need to give them a retention bonus. We need to promote them so that way we can get them 20 years, and then when they retire, they'll make more money. And they're arguing back and forth, and I just sat there. And I sat there for the whole meeting, and the sergeants chimed in, and I was like shell-shocked. And I learned a lot in that meeting. So I just sat there, and it ended at about lunch, and I went downstairs, and I started talking to the people I knew. I was in personnel. I knew everybody because I dealt with their personnel records and things like that. So I asked them what was important to them. And what I heard was, I'd like to be cross-trained. I heard that I didn't take advantage of the GI Bill when I came in, and I'm not going to be able to afford to finish my degree. And if I re-up, can I get the GI Bill? And I didn't have the answers to all these questions, but I was able to do research. The next day, we came in the morning. Commander came in, where are we at? I let them hash it out about the money, and he said, Spahos, do you have anything to say? I'm like, well, I have some ideas. And I shared them, just as I shared them with you, what I had heard. And what I learned through that, and just to bring it to the end, in the end, it was a collaboration between all of us. The voices went down. It was real calm. We all had a mission to accomplish. It was mission first. Everybody, the day that we came in to hash this all out finally, they checked the egos at the door. They dealt with only the facts. And they dealt with a combination of a solution that included all 3 options. The retention bonus, promotion, well, there were more than 3, but changing of MOS to be cross-trained, so when you get out, you can do a different type of job or a different job while you're in. One gentleman was 4 years from retiring, but his wife was worried that he'd be deployed. If he left the military, they weren't going to have health insurance. I went through everything with him, and he brought his wife in. I sat down with them, and we talked, and we were able to retain them. End of the story, we worked it out. We collaborated. The next year, I was appointed NCO for the unit because I was the one that sat back, listened, and then came up with a collaborative solution.
JP.
Yeah. Over my time in my professional roles, I have led and been on statewide committees, commissions, working groups, et cetera. So I've experienced this multiple times. And really what it comes down to is taking the time to listen. And what I mean by that is hear what other individuals are trying to say, especially if there's disagreement. Taking the time to ask those clarifying questions, seeking to understand their perspective, and using that to find common ground dialogue, ways to build that conversation forward. Using that as the starting point to kind of, or circling centering point for the conversation and build up from there. Part of that is maintaining those values that we hold dearly, keeping that dialogue civil, cordial, finding ways to bring people together, whether it's in different elements, finding those ways and opportunities to collaborate. And what I found at the end of the day is when there's conflict, it's usually because people are not being heard. People are not listening. And so really taking the time to respect their perspective, hear what they have to say, and using that to have that honest, cordial dialogue. And again, at the end of the day, is making sure everyone respects their positions because there's a reason why they hold their position.
So that concludes the interview question portion of this evening. I will just make sure that the village board doesn't have any other questions they'd like to add. Okay. So we'll move on then to discuss and consider potential appointment of the village trustee. So as has been done in the past, we have gone around and suggested our top name to start out. I would suggest that as a way to move forward first. If other board members have additional ideas, we can start there. Or Frick, don't mean to put you on the spot, if you have anything you'd like to add procedurally in how we move forward.
I mean, really, this is the board's process and how it wants to discuss or, I guess, come to a consensus about who to appoint to fill the vacancy. If you want, you can have the candidates sit up here. You can have them go sit in their seats as well. But yeah, I mean, any sort of process that the board wants, I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do it as long as we're not using secret ballots.
Okay. I'd invite you all to go take a seat in the audience so that you don't have to sit up here and thank you all for taking the time to put in an application and to sit up here and entertain us with your answers. They were very impressive all around. If it's easiest, we can just go in roll call vote order with and name the top candidates, and we'll see how that goes first.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So if we name our top candidate, then there still needs to be a motion to approve that person, or if there's a consensus, or once we build a consensus, then there would be a motion.
Yes. Yeah, this is not a motion. This is just a first step.
Right. This isn't like a vote or anything like that. It's just a preference, I suppose, at this point.
Okay. Benzo.
This is very difficult because the candidates all have unique attributes and many great characteristics individually. I am going to go with Spahos.
Dell.
Yeah, I also want to thank everybody who put their name in, and certainly a great group of candidates, so thank you first and foremost. I really need to look at the democratic process. We had an election in April. Essentially, there were 4 spots, 5 candidates, and the 4th highest vote getter was Mark Spahos. So I have to go with the democratic process, and I'm going to take Mark.
Cal Nelson.
I'm going to go with a top vote getter as well, and someone who has a lot of experience on this board. I'm going to go with Williams.
Murphy. I just want to take a moment to thank all of those of you that put in your name for this position. I think our community is extraordinarily lucky that we have 5 individuals that are willing to serve, listen to the community, and basically volunteer their time on this board representing their community. So I think I appreciate all of you taking the time to apply and answer questions, and if selected, then serve out the remainder of this term. So I would also go with the democratic process because we did have a very close race and would have come up with the same board members, and I think that this member also is very experienced and would bring all of us together in a good way. So I would select Williams. Severson.
Well, thank you all, as we've all said. I'm also, glad that 4 of the 5 of you have been selected to serve on committees. I wish all 5 were, but many of you have found a home, so thank you for your service there. My support would be for Mark.
Stoa.
That's a lot of pressure for me. I want to also say thank you to everybody to come down here. This is maybe my least favorite thing we have to do as a board. This is the third time I've done it now. And every time we've gotten qualified candidates, and we unfortunately have to disappoint most of them. All that to say, I'm going to go with John as well.
It's 3-3. Rick, do you want to jump in with some suggestions? If there are any.
Right. So, I mean, at this point, you know, there can be like discussion or debate about any of the candidates, you know, obviously trying to, I guess, sway other trustees to your position. Somebody could make a motion to move a candidate forward, but I guess the other thing too is if you're not able to make a decision tonight, there is not a specific requirement that you fill the position, but it would remain vacant until the next election in April or until an appointment is made.
Do the board members have suggestions on how you'd like to move forward?
I mean, honestly, if we're 3 John and 3 Mark, I mean, do we even need to go through this whole exercise? Like, I don't want to waste people's time. The people are in the audience. I mean, if the writing's on the wall, the writing's on the wall.
So I'm hearing we're going to stay as a 6-person board. All right.
I would like to add that there will be the next election, the seat will be up, and collection of signatures for nomination for an open seat begins usually the end of December. Beginning of December, with signatures due in January. So you can contact the clerk's office because I think that, of course, the voters deserve to have a choice of their candidates, and I think all of you would make, you know.
Can I ask one question?
So this is the board's meeting, so generally public comments are not allowed during the board's discussion. So yes, I mean, it's up to the board, but typically the public comments are only during the start of the meeting.
All right, you can come to the microphone.
You all mentioned the democratic process, and I appreciate that. And I think from a 6-member board, the community. I'll speak for myself. We want it filled. I would think. We had an election. There were several that were voted for. The election specifically, the democratic process was for that position. The number of votes don't really equate real well because it was 2 for the one seat and 5 for the other seat. So the numbers don't quite math out for that process. So if you want to follow a democratic process, which I heard several of you say, you got to consider the candidates within that tree, not you're going to have to separate them. But I think as a community, we would like to see a 7th. Thank you. Thank you.
I have one kind of request if the board will allow. So, my wife called me at 3:30 this morning from Arizona, telling me that she sent a letter in. It didn't get read. She'd be disappointed. I don't know if it'd do any good, but she knows me better than anybody else in this room. Bryce DeWalt sent in a letter. He contacted me personally on the phone twice today to make sure that I knew that it would be read. It wasn't. I would ask that it be read or put into the record. I believe there was another individual that sent a letter on my behalf. I didn't hear it read. I would ask that it be read or put into the record. I just do that out of respect for those individuals that had enough respect to stand up for me. And I think if we talk about the democratic way, I think that's the only way for true representation and transparency in what's going on in the village of Cottage Grove. Whether it be me or somebody else, I believe the board needs to fill the position because it's in the best interest of the village. And if you're here to represent the best interest of the village, I would only suggest that you get together and all the questions about collaborating and listening, sit down, figure it out. Thank you.
All right, I'm not going to allow any more public comment moving forward because we do need to move on. If we are not going to entertain a motion on another village trustee option.
Yeah, I would just like to say that, you know, a 7-member board is where we need to be, right? And I would say in the April election, Mark got 1,474 votes, the 4th highest total. It represented 54.2% of the votes cast for trustee because it was a 3-way race, or a 5-way race. You know, by law, village trustees are elected positions, not appointed. We operate under a representative form of government, and in this case, the voters of Cottage Grove made their preferences clear on who the 4th spot should be. Beyond the numbers, Mark has consistently demonstrated a strong commitment to our community. He did his homework, he campaigned actively, and regularly attended and spoke at commission and board meetings. He did his homework. He invested his time to understand the issues and engage in the process, not for personal recognition, but for the good of Cottage Grove. While there is no formal requirement to appoint the next highest vote getter, doing so would honor the will of the voters and reinforce transparency and public trust. In the past, when the board has gone in other directions, it has led to public criticism and concerns about fairness. Let's be honest. There's simply no way that 6 sitting village board members here can make a better decision for the voters than the ones the voters have already made for themselves. This is an opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to democratic principles and to support someone who has already proven he is ready to serve. So with that, I would like to make a motion to appoint Mark Spahouse to fill the vacant trustee position.
I'd second that motion.
There's a motion by Dahl and a second by Buenzo. Other discussion.
So, part of my frustration with the comments about being deadlocked and not wanting to waste people's time. The other piece is I really respect what John Williams you've done for this community, and it's really hard to be in a position to have to choose between the two of you. I've reflected a ton on this, and I was actually sitting in Mark's seat 14 years ago. Not the exact seat, but in the same position where I ran, I guess, for re-election for trustee. I poured my heart and soul into the role of trustee, but also to the campaign, only to come in 4th place. And it's literally the same situation from 14 years ago where Diane Wiedenbeck was elected village president, so her trustee seat was up. And I try not to get emotional. Diane and I did not agree on a lot of things, including the library. But she voted with the board to appoint me to fill her seat because it was the right thing to do. I was the 4th person in that race, and she knew it was the right thing to do. And I just believe so strongly, we have the best government system in the world. A republic is a constitutional republic. And that gives the power to the people. And the people just had an election, and they just spoke. And again, we're going through this again. And I know, Heidi, when you made the motion for Cindy to reach out 2 meetings ago, to John, and you made the comment about, well, he received 1,800 votes. Well, yeah, but that's not an apples to apples comparison. And following that logic, then I should be appointed village president because I got 1,973 votes, right? So we can't make that comparison. But the bigger thing for me is, why should the 6 of us sitting at this table make a decision when we just heard the voters' voice on this? I mean, we're verging from a representative government to an autocracy. So, you know, I support this motion. I support Mark. I know what it's like to be in his shoes, but the board at the time did the right thing, and now we are in the position to do the right thing again. I understand that, you know, throughout the campaign, personalities probably clashed. I understand that Mark speaks directly, and, you know, but what you see is what you get with him, right? Like, there's honesty, there's integrity. The fact that he invited you guys to the forums that he set up at apartment buildings, he gave every candidate a chance to have their voice heard. That should say something about who he is. And so I strongly support this motion. I support the 32 people on the petition signatures. I support the people who have emailed and the people who spoke tonight, because at the end of the day, it's not about us, it's about them.
Thank you. A couple meetings ago, we sat here and we're told that the community elected a split board, which it seems that they have, and we have a lot of things that we need to come to a consensus on so we can move forward for the best interest of the community. I'm greatly concerned with selecting a person to tip the scale on that. I think that we can best serve the community by coming together, three of us, as has been, you know, I don't see it that way. I think we are 6 people representing the best interest of this community. And if the best way that we can come together is finding consensus among all of us and the best way to move forward, you know, maybe the 6-person board is the best way to do that. It's clear after the campaign that, you know, we're the people that were selected to move this community forward. And the others didn't make the top of the ballot. It's, so you know, if we're clearly tipping the scales in one direction if we move forward with this motion.
So what you're saying is you're willing to discount 1,474 voters who basically wanted to fill the 4th spot of a 4 open position board?
I don't believe that was the question on the ballot. There were 3 seats open and the top 3 people were selected.
There were 1,474 voters that voted for this individual.
Chris? Sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
The voting line on the ballots says vote for 3. It doesn't say vote for 3 and select an alternate. There's an argument to be made for selecting the next person. There's an argument to be made for not selecting them because, quote unquote, they might have been rejected by the voters. I personally think what we have to do is vote for the best person in the moment right now. And that's all I can say at the moment. All I have to say at the moment. Thank you.
I just want, for the record, to state again that all the candidates were fantastic. So much to contribute from each of you. As Paula had mentioned, this is not an easy decision either. I didn't take this lightly. I'm also new to the board, and I took that into weighed into my decision as well, as sometimes having new members with experience in other areas that they can bring to the board and decisions is very helpful. So the comment about tipping the scales, I don't agree with. Mark has made, as the other candidates did, their stances on individual decisions. And that's how I vote, is individual. It's not scaling. It's not us against them. This is my stance is the voters, the village residents voted for me as one of the trustees.
All right, there is a motion and a second. So we're going to move ahead with a roll call vote. So the motion is to appoint Mark Spahos to the open trustee position.
Benzo.
Yes, aye, yes.
Down.
Aye.
Kelm Nelson.
No.
Murphy. No. Severson.
Aye.
Stoa.
No.
3-3. Is there any other comment or? Chris?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to appoint John Williams as the 7th trustee.
I'll second.
Right, there's a motion by Stowe and a second by Murphy to appoint John Williams to the appointed position. Any discussion? Otherwise, we'll do a roll call vote.
Benzo.
No.
Dahl.
No.
Kelm Nelson.
Aye.
Murphy. Aye. Severson.
No.
Stoa.
Yes.
So that was two motions for two individuals. Are there other motions?
I'll make a motion to appoint JP Vicencio as the next 7th village trustee.
I'll second.
There's a motion by Stowe and a second by Murphy. Is there any more discussion on this motion? All right, roll call vote.
Benzo.
No.
Dahl.
No.
Kelm Nelson.
Aye.
Murphy. Aye. Severson.
No.
Stoa.
Yes.
All right.
Hey, I'm going to make a motion to appoint Chuck Bellimonter as the next 7th village trustee.
I'll second.
Motion by Stoa, second by Murphy to appoint Chuck Pellymounter as the 7th trustee.
I don't know what you're trying to prove. I mean, we're kind of spinning our wheels here. So, I mean, that's fine. We can go down the list, Chris, if you'd like. I would request you modify your motion that we just go a 6-person board.
Do you want to modify your motion? No. All right, roll call vote.
This is for Chuck.
For Chuck.
Okay. Benzo.
Can you please clarify the motion?
It's a motion to appoint Chuck Pellymounter to the open trustee position.
No.
Dahl.
No.
Kelm Nelson.
Aye.
Murphy. Aye. Severson.
No.
Stoa.
Yes. Make a motion to appoint Eric Brown as the 7th village trustee.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion by Stoa, second by Murphy to appoint Eric Braun to the open trustee position. Roll call vote.
I'd like to make a comment, please.
Yes.
Again, I want to say I appreciate all of you who applied. I think one of the things that I'm really struggling with is that 4 of you have already been appointed to committees on the village. And Mark, who also applied to be on a committee in the village, did not get any committees. So unfortunately, what the public is getting to see right now is politics at its worst. And it really makes me sick. And it's nothing against Chuck or Eric or JP or John or anything like that. But to have, and Chuck said something and I wrote it down, allowing all voices. We're not doing that, and that's sad to me.
Just a clarifying point that he had applied for several committees, but they're not active committees. So there is a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
I believe he applied for other committees.
Sorry, can I just say one thing real quick? You mentioned hearing other voices, and I just want to point out that we've made a motion for several people, and there have been no's across the board, so.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Benzo.
No.
Dahl.
No.
Kelm Nelson.
Aye.
Murphy. Aye. Severson.
No.
Stoa.
All right.
All right, there have been motions for all candidates. We are going to remain as a 6-person board for the immediate future. And again, as been said, thank you so much for taking the time and for and the efforts and your answers tonight. I know we all really appreciate that. And again, papers circulate in December, and hope to see you back here. All right, so we're going to move on. We have discussed and consider the Rudabush TID 9 agency contract extension. So this is in regards to potential redevelopment in TID 9. This would be a one-year extension of the Rudabush contract. Are there questions or comments on the contract? Otherwise, this is a discuss and consider.
Just a discussion item. So it gives a definite period of time, I guess, knowing that this is a long-term project. Should the board move forward, I would recommend to renew until otherwise, brought forward.
I'd make the motion to approve the Rudabush TID 9 agency contract extension as presented.
I'll second that.
All right, there's a motion by Murphy and a second by Dahl. Any other discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. We have, moving on to unfinished business, item C, discuss and consider assignment of Hensiak Holdings LLC, which is New Tech Painting Municipal Revenue Obligation. We do have an option for a potential closed session if the board feels that's necessary, but I'm going to turn it over to Rick first, just for an overview.
So Friday, I sent the board an update on where this lease is at. So Dave has not provided the security deposit yet. He has the municipal revenue obligation, or like the TID incentive that he got for his new building out on Cottage Grove Road. In lieu of paying the security deposit, he would like to assign the income from that development incentive to pay the security deposit. Basically, not pay, but more as collateral. He intends to pay the security deposit this summer. He's, Cameron maybe knows more about it, but he has his funds invested in inventory for his business. And so he could draw on a line of credit to pay the security deposit, but he'd prefer not to take on the interest charges. So he proposed assigning the income from his TID incentive as sort of like a stopgap until the end of the summer, where he would make a payment at the end of the summer to get the security deposit up to date, but hold this as collateral in the interim. So there is the option for a closed session if you'd like to discuss any of the terms. Otherwise, if you're in favor or opposed to this, we could take action on it right now.
And I have no concerns with the MRO assignment as written. Fully earned the incentive. It's roughly $50-some thousand that we would be able to take a portion of it for the security deposit, and then the rest would be paid to him sometime in January.
I just have a question. I don't know if I can ask this or if we can make a motion to go into closed session. So I hear what you're saying about the TID and if he's not able to pay, but I would have more questions about future finances since this is being proposed. So I don't know how to go about this, if we need further discussion in closed session.
Yeah, I'll make one comment. If there's needs to be more conversation, then we can entertain the closed session later on the agenda. I think one thing that's important to remember is when we did the original LOI, it didn't include a security deposit. And so decisions may have been made knowing what his estimated rent payment was, and then to come back and ask for $16,000. I think that's where, potentially his planning was at. If I would say if we want to talk about this further, we should probably go into closed session about the terms. But again, I have no concern with the MRO and what the MRO is supporting.
Yeah, just from like a risk standpoint, just given the value of the building and the increment it would generate, I'm not concerned about, like, even if we were to sell the building, that wouldn't matter because the MRO is personal to his business. So that money is coming through the property taxes that are paid through the project. So like from a risk standpoint, this is fairly certain we're going to get the money unless they don't pay the taxes. And if that's the case, there are bigger issues at play there.
So if he sells that building, there isn't a proration of that benefit to the purchaser of that property?
No, so the MRO is issued to, or municipal revenue obligation, that's issued directly to the Hensiak Holdings entity. So I've checked on the state's like website for filings. There's no like recorded security interest in that MRO. And if you were to sell that, it doesn't transfer with the property. It's still to the Hensiak Holdings. And he can't assign it without the village's consent. So it's our benefit to lose.
All right, this is a discuss and consider. Does the board feel that it should go into closed session first? No. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of the MRO assignment of with Hensiak Holdings. I don't know how much you want in there.
I second that.
There's a motion by Severson and a second by Buenzo. Any more discussion on it? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Moving on to new business, we have discuss and consider Resolution 2025-10, support of accessible playgrounds. So this is mine. I brought this back after the discussion and the presentation from Bill Schultz in the Miracle League of Dane County as another affirmation of support that I had heard from the board meeting from all board members, but also as a tool that they can use when they go through their capital campaign.
I would move approval of resolution number 2025-10.
And I'll second.
There's a motion by Severson and a second by Murphy. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. We've discussed and consider Resolution 2025-11, recognizing May as Military Appreciation Month. Collaboration between me and Chris. Chris, if you have anything you'd like to add.
Only that it's Military Appreciation Month, and we should show our appreciation to the military. Thank you.
I would move approval of resolution number 2025-11.
And I'll second that motion.
All right, motion by Severson, second by Murphy. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Discuss and consider approving warranty deed for village acquisition of parcels. Cameron.
I think this one's me and Kyla.
Oh, sorry. Cameron,
yeah.
You're off the hook.
So-
I'm sorry. I just wrote your name down on everything.
Yeah, so
You,
this
Kyla.
is, Kyla, can you bring these parcels up on the screen?
Yeah, I can.
So this is over in the Quarry Ridge area. Essentially, these parcels are somewhat odd because north of that subdivision, it's a small sliver of land that is in the town. So these are like remnants of the parcel when it was split. So they weren't dedicated through like the plat approval process. So to do anything else with these properties, we would have to go through like the town CSM process or certified survey map process. The simplest solution or most straightforward is to just deed these over to the village. So it's approximately 3 acres. These, I think they're basically drainage ways, Kyla.
Correct. There'll be drainage ways, and then technically it will be where Map Pass and Landmark are actually connected, because right now it's a small section of town when the village maintains it, because we have the connectivity. So it's the parcel highlight, the 2 parcels highlighted in blue. So it'd be this one and this one.
Yep. So there's no purchase price. This is just being given to the village. And the village cannot annex them because Graham's Auto is in the town and we can't create a town island. So these are going to remain in the town and for the foreseeable future.
Can you clarify that? You said you cannot create a town island. So if those 2 little narrow strips become part of the village, that's a
They're
town island?
still in the town of Cottage Grove. So it's owned by the village, but under the town's jurisdiction. So it's odd.
Okay.
Yeah, so Peter, if those were annexed, it would leave Graham's Auto and the residential parcel just as an island in the village. Yeah.
base,
Well, it's not okay.
the base map's not
illegal.
loading, or I would try to show you where it's, but Graham's Auto is this highlighted and this northern highlighted. If that makes sense to you. The base map's not loading, or else I would have an aerial.
Right, so state statute prohibits the village from annexing to where having the village completely surround a town area like that. So that's why we can't move forward with annexation regardless of ownership. But these are still part of the stormwater maintenance system. And it does have roadways on there. So that small little strip, this just sort of just clarifies ownership.
Trying to show you, trying to grab the limits that'll show up when you look at the village, but when you look at the village limits, that isn't gonna work for me right now. So,
I would move approval of the warranty deed for, between A&M Management LLC and the Village of Cottage Grove.
I'll second that.
All right, there's a motion by Severson and a second by Dahl. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, moving on to reports from village boards, commissions, and committees. First up is law enforcement. Chris?
We met on Tuesday, April 22nd at 5:30. We approved the minutes from the previous meeting. There was no old business. There was no new business. Chief went through his reports, and we adjourned after about 10 minutes.
Any questions for Chris? Any comments from Chief Gary? Okay. Board of Review. Heidi, I don't know if you want to take this one. It's very
Sure.
busy.
Thank you. We met on Monday, May 6th. Actually, it's Monday, May 5th. This is the 2024 agenda linked here. So we met on Monday, May 5th. We held the Board of Review for the required 2 hours. We were open. We did not have anyone come to give testimony regarding their assessment, so we closed the annual Board of Review, and we will conduct our next Board of Review next year.
Thank you, Heidi. Any comments for Heidi or questions?
Nope, just for the public, we typically try to keep these dates around the same time. Next year, it won't be. We'll meet to adjourn, and then because we're going to do a full reevaluation as approved in part of the 2025 budget. So that meeting will likely be sometime in August or September, depending on when they wrap up their work. There's a much longer notice period, so that's what takes some of the time.
All right, moving on to Police Commission. Chief?
Police Commission met on May 7th. In that meeting, they discussed the deputy chief job description and finalized that process. And we also discussed, I apologize, current status of the department and also moving forward with alternate interview questions for various positions within the police department and hiring process.
Any questions for Chief? Okay. Moving on to Deer Grove EMS Commission. Peter, Paula?
We met on May 15th. We started off with a pinning ceremony for another new paramedic. That's the fourth one here in the last 2 months, which is great, so they're fully staffed. We approved April financials, April bills, and aging accounts, all approved. Went through the chief's report. There was some correspondence. The Parkinson Run organizers thanked the EMS for providing standby coverage. We got a thank you from a Deerfield student who participated in a ride-along. We discussed a little restructuring of the department, basically currently set up for 3 lieutenants. Devin Anders left and created a little bit of shakeup. The situation that happened here with Chief as well sort of shed a little light on the structure and the responsibilities of what needs to be done. So essentially, the plan is to convert from 3 lieutenants to 4, promoting within. The financial impact is because of the vacancy and the tenure of Devin, it's net neutral, so it's not going to impact the budget. We reviewed the City of Sun Prairie policy, the forum study that was done. Really not a whole lot came out of that. It was more Sun Prairie centric than anything. We discussed an RFP request for Marshall, Medina, and the town of York. We declined to participate in that for a number of reasons. Then we elected commission officers for this year. I was elected as the chair. Carrie from the Village of Deerfield was elected as the secretary, and we adjourned.
Any questions for Pete?
I do have a question. There was an item on about capital planning and building needs. Is that like a standing item, or did you have some discussion around that?
We did go through the capital. It's gonna be shared with fire, and they're going to add, because most of it's related to the emergency services building.
So that was a separate, so the last meeting they did capital equipment specifically for EMS, so talking about ambulance response vehicles and other gear. This one, Chief Lang and Chief Archinabal and I met really to try to get an understanding of what the 10-year needs are for that building. So some big ticket items that came up, a new roof that's estimated to be about $225,000, as well as some sort of action that's going to be needed for addressing growth. So there is a study in there, $50,000 to $100,000 for a study, and then implementation of that study. I'm going to go to the fire commission meeting. I think it would be good for the board to provide some directions on what the expectations of that process is and what at least the village is looking to get out of that study. So ultimately what's brought forward to the board is something that everybody is in alignment with, kind of fostering that collaboration ahead of time instead of starting with no and then working backwards and for a solution.
Yeah, I would agree that we have to get ahead of that, and so we can start planning for the future. Although I do find it, it's, providing the building space for EMS, it is interesting to be at the commission because Deerfield's there and they provide their own station, we provide our own station. So I just find it interesting, the discussions happening at the commission level. We really need to have this conversation, but it's just,
It's an interesting
Yeah,
dynamic,
it is.
but again, because of the growth really happening here more than anywhere, the plan is to come in the 26 budget cycle for a study that would basically leverage, all the inputs and then lay out what the requirement would be. But again, it's most likely within the next 10 years, another facility and a sizable $3 to $6 million investment. But again, it's all predicated on a study, which is the first step.
right, and Deerfield, so are we studying the service, or are we studying the facilities needs, or we're studying the service in the village? It's just, because the two jurisdictions don't overlap with the two shared services, it does make things complicated.
So, I was just gonna say, I think the Village of Deerfield actually, because this is a very proactive measure that Cameron's going after. The comment was made at the commission meeting that that's something that they should also be doing for themselves. But at the end of the day, it's really just gonna come back to us and the town board in terms of kind of those costs and such. But they'll be having those conversations as well.
But it's really starting at the user level with, because EMS and fire use the building, know the needs, come up with a 10-year plan. Hopefully that stays maybe in a May agenda item moving forward too, so that we can make sure we capture that going into our budget prioritization process.
Yeah. And if we can keep that as a member of the fire commission, if we can kind of work in parallel, tandem, and, of course, staff will help us, guide us in that to make sure we're, we want to be singing in harmony and not, not.
Yeah, there might be a recommendation on future agenda items when we get further in the agenda tonight. But yes, just want to keep it very simple. EMS basically is a tenant. They don't have any financial obligation. And so I do want to be very cautionary. I think $3 to $6 million is a very, I think the investment's going to be much more than that $3 to $6 million amount. And so I just don't want to put that out in the community and then have it come back much larger than that. So I'm just realizing that there's a lot of work that needs to be done before we know what the true impact is.
In the terms of the study proposed for next year, facilities and user study, it'd be village specific, or would the town be partnering in the study or just using the results of the study?
That needs to, there's some elements of what is actually included in the study that needs to be identified, but it's really, the discussion was focusing around EMS and how EMS is, like Cameron says, is a tenet of the emergency services building, and how does that dovetail with fire needs. So we need to kind of talk through that, but I think at Joint Fire, we're gonna basically pick that up, and it's gonna probably be a little bit bigger, but it's gonna start with a study. And again, that's the danger of doing a 10-year capital plan. I mean, we had 3 to 6 million identified by chief for this number. We have no idea. It's just a placeholder.
Yep, and so just to make sure we're staying on track with the agenda, the future agenda item I would recommend is discuss and consider feedback to the town on direction of the emergency service building and facility planning, so.
All right, moving on then, Public Works, Properties and Sustainability Committee. Chris or Paula?
You want me to take it? Okay. So we met on May 14th, Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. We had a couple of public appearances, some people concerned about speeding and not stopping, and requests for stop signs specifically on Landmark and School, Landmark and Limestone, and Landmark and Michelle. We approved the minutes. We had a Public Works update on the Clark No Street parking. We had previously talked about the temporary one in Public Works, and it was an update about moving that to permanent, which we approved as the village board. And then we had a nice discussion about traffic calming for long-term planning. We just kind of put out the call to people if they had any ideas for trying to make our streets safer, to come to us so we can try to get it in the budget and figure out what we need to do to try to lower speeds and make people safer. We are going to come back to that next month as well. Engineers reports. West Lawn is beginning in spring. Quarry Ridge Phase D will begin this month. Amazon, their traffic impact is on NNTT is getting close to finishing. Heyday is working on their final submittals. And the street and pedestrian project is moving along. I believe the streets on the Heather Drive area and Bonnie Road should be finished by the end of this month. Fingers crossed. Taylor and Maine will begin in June, and Alliant is bearing the lines right now to work so that we can work on the path. The director's report, e-waste events, sounds like it went really well. They had a bunch of stuff donated, or given, thrown away. I don't know what the e-cycled. Yeah, there you go. Equipment and fleet update. We got the snow and ice control program has not been updated in a while, and they are working on updating that. It was last updated in October 2011. We were told about the county highway and bridge replacement, which will be taking place in 2027, which will knock out County Highway N for 2 to 3 months. That's over Little Door Creek, down a ways. And we were also told that we are going to have some green paint for the path cross sections when it crosses over driveways, so that we have enough that we don't need to buy any. So that's good. And then we adjourned. I don't know what time it was, though.
Can I just add? So on the conversation about like Landmark Drive and that area, I think, aren't they coming back to us with some
oh, yes.
costs on doing a traffic study or traffic counts in that area?
Yeah, we talked to Josh at engineering to consider certain things and what their costs might be, like adding in stop signs or a speed bump or speed hump or like a mini traffic circle. And they're going to get back to us with cost and time it would take and if it would have any impact.
One of the residents who spoke actually printed out a map of Google from his area coming to Village Hall. And, you know, Google tells you to cut up Landmark Drive, right? And he also mentioned the commercial traffic that, you know, Grand Appliance trucks are coming in the morning right up Landmark Drive because it's easier than going down to Commerce Parkway and looping around. And, you know, there's some concerns with a bus stop at Landmark and Michelle. But, you know, I know I go to Culver's and I cut up Landmark Drive, right? Most of us probably do. And I don't know that that was intended when we originally kind of planned that subdivision. And so I think those traffic accounts and studies will be very helpful.
I just wanted, because I did listen to the meeting, and a lot of the comments were focused on that area, but over time we have gotten comments about other areas of concern and speed and stop signs, and there's a lot of of course we have a lot of users on our streets, bicyclists, pedestrians, cars, workers, delivery trucks. So there was an MPO grant, the Metropolitan Planning Organization grant that we had applied for. It was a matching grant, so we would chip in 30,000, and then it was, I think, 120,000 total. So as part of the Safe Streets for All grant program, and so that was to study to come up with a what was the name of it's like a active transportation plan for the village, so we can take actionable steps to make different intersections or areas more user-friendly and how we should focus our capital plans. And so there was like a holdup with grants, but is it able to be distributed? Is that something that we might be able to study these areas and other areas and how we can focus our efforts?
Yes, very much so. So JJ applied for the grant last year. We were awarded, or the MPO was awarded the grant with several other communities in the Dane County area. As of January 1, the grant wasn't awarded by the federal government by January 20th. There's been a lot of holdup in the government on that process. So I was informed Thursday morning that the MPO is working forward and that they have got the green light so that we will have an agreement here hopefully soon, so we will be able to start that process. It's a 2-year planning document, develops safety of the roads for pedestrians, cyclists. It'll have public engagement, crash analysis, and it'll come out with potential projects from that as well. So.
And we can refer that back to Public Works, and that'll kind of be the committee that houses that, along with any other studies we want to add on. But that's like money that is allocated that we could get studies going. Is that kind of the plan?
Correct. Okay. Yep. It's a total of $150,000, where it's a matching for the federal pays $120,000 and the village already has $30,000 already budgeted for it.
Kyla and Chief have been working on policy procedure and getting that information out to committees and then ultimately out to residents, so that everyone knows how we evaluate traffic and issues in the village and move forward with that. So thank you for working on all of those really important issues.
Cindy, just one other comment. We can amend ordinances or add to from a weight restriction process, so to not directed necessarily at grant appliance, but any weight limit that we want to determine, which would, maybe Chief is thinking otherwise, but at least theoretically we can do that.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that comment, we would just need to have sort of engineering basis to say a weight limit can be supported, or we can make it like a Class B highway, which would reduce the weight to, I think, 60%. So I think it's like 48,000 pounds, which probably wouldn't affect the grand appliance, but it would basically eliminate semi-traffic. But so there are other options that we can look at for trucks on that route, with Chief giving me angry looks over there.
One thing is it can impact commerce, and I'll use a specific example. A delivery truck that's making a delivery to a business in that park. As they leave that park, they have the right to go south because of their route of travel to their next destination. You cannot force them to go north to come back south. So you have restaurants that take food deliveries, and then when they depart those restaurants, if there's not access for them to go to the north, they do have the right to go south. So just something, there's a lot of moving parts.
I guess I did have one more question on that. Is it, well, we can create rules and restrictions, I think that most of our businesses and all of our businesses in our community want to be a good neighbor. Is it worth like a conversation with them? I don't know how we go about that. Like, you know, they want to be good neighbors, and we have other examples of, you know, creating opportunity to be good neighbors by construction, traffic being rerouted. Like, maybe it's just worth a talk. I'm not sure what would be appropriate in this situation. Just talk to Grand of, you know, we have a lot of kids using. Maybe it would be easier, better for everyone involved to, you know, take the main path. I'm not sure if that's worth exploring.
Can add it to my list. We can explore it.
One thing that was mentioned in committee is one main issue is the turn from Limestone onto County N is a right turn only. So that makes people have to double back. I don't know. I'm sure there's a solution, but it would cost money. So it would just be something to think about for the future.
Any other comments for Public Works? All right. Moving on to reports from village officers. Village Attorney, Rick.
I have nothing to report tonight. I guess I would just say if there's anything that anybody wants me to present on in the future, I'm more than willing to take suggestions. Otherwise, the legislature is in session now. I think the Supreme Court's session is basically coming to a close. I don't think we'll get any more opinions in the near future. But if there are any sort of like statutory changes or things like that, we'll be sure to keep you all apprised.
Assistant Administrator, Finance Director Cameron has 3 topics to discuss tonight.
Thank you. So the first one shouldn't be a surprise. This is just bringing back the funding options for possible village contribution towards accessible park project. So I laid out 5 different options here, varying in the level of support. The one thing I would caution is I don't know if option 3 is necessarily sustainable given the fund balance in that fund. So while we could probably squeeze it and make it work, it may create some issues cash funding some things that we've historically funded in the annual budget, which has been replenished with interest income and the small, modest amount of revenue that comes in that fund. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions on the different options or entertain a motion.
Just one quick comment, because I like to make things more complicated. So one thing that we would have to work through with Miracle League if we do make a contribution to this project is because the project cost exceeds $25,000 and we're giving potentially more than $25,000, it would subject this project to public bidding laws. So that's just, you know, it shouldn't be a reason not to do it, but we would just need to make sure that Miracle League is doing that. I think one potential way to simplify the process is if, again, we would need to discuss with Amazon, but rather than them paying the village and then us paying Miracle League, if Amazon just makes that contribution directly to Miracle League, that is just more straightforward.
Yeah, and you raise a good point. I apologize. So we were in communication with Amazon, requested if this was an allowable use of what the donation is. I just want to again clarify, we don't actually have this money in our bank account. So when we reached out, we also asked what that process would look like from a distribution perspective. And to Rick's point, that I would further recommend that if it was an allowable cost, we just try to have them send the check directly to Miracle League.
I'm not, anyway, sorry. Been a long meeting. My question is, I am in 100% support of children with disabilities and the Miracle Park. I have questions, so I don't know if it pertains to this or if it's in addition to the parking is a huge issue. So even if, let's say, the Miracle Park were not to exist or is not going to go through, the parking there still needs to be addressed in Bakken Park. So I don't know when I should be bringing that cost up as well and taking a look at that.
Yeah, I guess, so I would recommend working with Sean to get that on a Parks and Rec committee. I don't know what analysis have been done, I guess you're sitting right next to me, about what the current parking is. I do also want to point out, just pavement in general, there is a replacement cost too. So we do try to minimize pavement going forward, just because of the exponential cost it is to resurface things. And I'm sure that was considered. But yes, I would recommend going that route.
But one thing in addition is to factor in how many days of the year is parking adequate, because, you know, and then figuring out what would the cost be to add the amount of parking that would be needed, and then if we're solving that for 10 days a year, 20 days a year, I don't know what it is, but, you know, is that cost then worth it? So
it sounds like, Sean, maybe you can touch base with Trustee Buenzo and talk about parking, and perhaps see that on a Parks meeting agenda. Okay. Other comments on this
Yeah, so
funding option?
if I could just get it clarified for me. So I spent some time over there this weekend looking at where we're at. So was this proposal to replace the Dream Park along the first baseline, or is this in the green space along the third baseline?
Replace the park that is, the playground that is currently there along the first baseline.
Okay, and I think we talked before that this park has another 3 to 5 years probably. I mean, I walked through it, it seemed like it's in pretty good shape. So the question is, why the urgency, number one? Second question is, if there's a down payment made and the village and the Miracle League have this down payment of $250,000, come December, if the funds aren't raised, what happens? Is it possible that the vendor of this equipment would terminate it if payment isn't made? What happens to the village's down payment? I mean, a lot of questions about execution of not a fully funded project.
So the second part of that is we are not liable for purchase. If we can't get to the point where we're at purchase, they can, between the Miracle League or the village, we could say we're out. So if we don't raise, if enough funds aren't allowing us to purchase, we're not on the hook for that.
We'd be refunded our down payment?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Even with the payment that's due on July 1st?
Yes.
Okay. Because the actual purchase of the equipment would happen at the end of the year, and then the company would store it until installation. But the funds would be completely, all the fundraising would be done by the end of the year.
To get us
In order to purchase,
yes,
and then for
yes.
installation.
Correct.
So there's little risk
Correct.
to the village.
Okay, if you could just have that clarified. I mean, I've done a lot of purchasing of large items like this, and I've never heard of a down payment being fully refundable. So if we could just get that in writing, I think that's really critical.
I can do that.
And me, again, being new to the board, sorry. I would really like to see a more outlined and detailed cost, timeline, you know, like I mentioned earlier, parking. To me, looking at this, and maybe this is just me being new, this just seems really willy-nilly, and I'm not seeing more of a defined outline and cost.
Sure, so I guess I just want to remind it, this would not be a village project. So the Miracle League would be the one that has the more detailed plans. So I included what would be the village's responsibility in the memo tonight.
And I think,
Thank you for clarifying. I'm looking at that, and I read it earlier. It just is, you know, like we were just discussing, if this doesn't go through, then the village would be reimbursed. So it sounds like we would really need to have things in writing and outlined of Miracle is responsible for this and village is responsible for that.
Yep, so in the motion, we would ask for that flexibility to work towards an acceptable agreement with Miracle League regarding our contribution. Very similar to like any other donations, we would want to lay out what exactly are the expectations and the commitment for a donation that large.
Thank you.
So again, I go back. Again, I go back to the age, right? The urgency. I'm kind of missing it. I'm 100% behind a strategy that replaces the existing Dream Park with a more accessible playground. Absolutely. I'm not quite sure why we're going ahead and ordering something before the funds have been raised, number one. Number two, when I think about the parking lot, I was over there looking at the number of handicap spots and the accessibility. How, this just the traffic study and how many spots would need to be converted. When you have a handicap spot, we lose, it's about 2 to 1. So I'm just wondering, we haven't really done any sort of study about what are the needs, and we're kind of plowing forward funding something that hasn't, I just struggle with the urgency, right? I mean, if it's part of the strategy, great, I'm all for it, but it seems like we haven't done our homework in order to proceed with this level of funding.
The urgency is just that they want to get it done. Each Miracle League game that goes by presents an opportunity for kids to not be allowed to play together. So when they approached us with this project, it was very aggressive. And I said, wow, we're going to try and build this in less than a year. The Miracle League just wants to get it done. And we're facing some traffic issues, but I would echo what Matt said, or parking issues, and the fact that we have to really figure out, is 80% of the time, are there stalls available? Is that park okay? Or is it less than that? And I'm not saying that 80% is the number that we work off of. But we are looking at, and since our last meeting, we've started to look at what are our options down there. I mean, we don't currently have any land that we could build on. So what are our other options? And some things that have come forward is, could we restripe it and allow for more handicap parking? Because I think some of the people that are not being able to park there are the ones that really need to park there. So more disabled parking. But with that involves some things like just pathways to and from that we would have to modify. So we're looking at that stuff right now, and hopefully we can kind of meet in the middle and have a plan of attack before this would actually get built.
So after our last meeting, I went to the park too, and I walked around and looked, and there, along third base, that direction would be perfect to add parking. It's so close to the ball field, and I'm thinking of children that already have mobility issues, and the parking on Clark Street is ridiculous. People park on Villas, and they're not supposed to. So I guess my concern would be for parents, how are they going to get their children closer? So more parking. But I heard what you said, Matt, about needing to take a look at what percentage. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of land there. There is opportunity to add more parking.
I just wanted to add a couple things. We do have a parks and open space plan that goes over where we want to be for all of our parks, what the dedication is, what the future plans are for our parks. So that would be a good background information to get. I'm sure Sean could get you a copy. It's on the website, or we could send a copy of it. So that's helpful. As Parks Committee Chair, we went through the process of updating that. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about when Bill Schultz was here and talked about the needs of the Miracle League. He said the needs of the Miracle League is parallel play and parallel play structure, and that is the need of the Miracle League. He did not mention that parking was a significant barrier to kids being able to participate in the Miracle League. That doesn't mean that I don't think we should study the parking needs, but Bill talked about the need of the users of the park is the playground. And we can continue to have dialogue with all the different users of the park, continue to make modifications, study, plan in our capital plan. That big open space is for, it was like being reseeded and based before we could really utilize it for programming, but it is for a flag football program. But we can continue to analyze and make adjustments as needed. But I just wanted to reiterate that the need for the Miracle League is this playground, and we're here to serve users of the park, the residents, and I think it would be an appropriate use of park development funds because it is a community level park to dedicate those funds to this improvement. We do not currently have the Amazon money in our possession, so I think at this point, I would feel uncomfortable reallocating that money because we don't have that money to even reallocate. So I think, our park development fund is currently in excellent shape. I think we have 800,000, or maybe once the heyday permit is taken out, well, that's, we have healthy fund balance in that. We don't have many projects coming down the line in that other than the Shady Grove. That'll serve that Shady Grove park development additions, and then the heyday, users would use that park as well. So I think that this would be a good use of our park development funds.
Thank you for that. There is, I have noticed that there's plenty of space built for soccer fields, but not all of that space is being used. And so that's why I mentioned like down third base. I mean, that's just open space. And the comment about Miracle Mile didn't bring out parking, well, they still need to park somewhere to get their kids there. And we already know that there's not adequate parking, with the splash pad and when there's rugby games going on and other events going on, there's just simply not enough parking. So no matter what, the parking does need to be addressed.
So I'm hearing that Sean will work on the parking analysis and probably just bring that back to Parks, and then it'll come back as a committee report. I just want to add too that it was a needs-based assessment from the Miracle League too, and they brought this project to the village. They went from, it was like 91 children in 2021. They have nearly 400 now. And parallel play is important for children, cognitive and physical development, regardless of ability. And so it's really important to have these types of accessible playgrounds where children can interact with like children, different children, caregivers, kind of, and across the age spectrum. And I know if it wasn't linked in the agenda, perhaps we can get a copy of the presentation from the Miracle League, because that had pretty good plans, and I know it was up on the screen, so maybe a little hard for us to kind of digest it in the moment. But perhaps we could get those plans so we can take a better look at it too.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing at all with this, and I understand about the parallel play and the numbers, et cetera, and that's a very good point, and that reiterates again, we need to take a really thorough look at accessibility for the number of children that you just mentioned. I mean, there's a big difference from 70 to 400 kids, and then where are we going to park them?
This is a discuss and consider for the funding options, and I know Park Development Fund was listed as an option. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
I guess just process-wise, so if there is direction on how to fund it tonight, I do think we would need some sort of agreement with Miracle League. So basically, I think we'd be using this as direction to put together an agreement on funding this, and then that would come back to the board for final approval. So, because there'd be more than just like the funding aspect of it. Like Pete mentioned, there's the reimbursement, like the risk to the village if it doesn't move forward. It's like there are other things that would need to be addressed. But I think this is just more or less giving us direction tonight and not a final decision.
And then can I ask my clarifying question about whether this is a pledge and when it would be due, if it would be due at the end of the year, if you need this by, well, obviously it's not going to happen by June 1st, but by July 1st, I think was their first installment. What does the timeline look like to make a decision and have that MOU in hand moving forward?
Yeah, timeline was July 1st for them for the $152,000 down payment. So they would be looking at it for that. But I believe that as long as we're discussing, I think that if need be, the Miracle League could handle taking care of that payment up front by themselves without our 125, as long as we were still pursuing it or we hadn't said no.
Okay.
Can I just, since I didn't speak on this one, I would just say I'm not ready yet to make a funding decision. I think there are too many variables. So, I think if you can come back with some more information, I think that would be great. But I'm not ready to make a yes or no kind of consideration on this yet.
Heidi?
If we were to delay, I guess, what kind of information, I guess we're looking to direct staff to bring things to us that, like, what additional information would you want staff to bring to be comfortable in that decision? Or I guess anyone, if you're not ready to decide.
I think the things were outlined with the questions about, dates and down payments and things like that, the parking. I'm looking at the open space map and I see a really easy parking solution. So just kind of those things. What would be the ancillary costs beyond just constructing the project, right? So, but I think the other list of things would be helpful to know answers to come back.
I guess I don't have the direction I need. So if the ask is to get cost estimates for a parking lot and then study the parking, and then bring this forward, I don't think we're talking about a month. We're probably talking about 3 or 4 months of planning. Just because it just can't happen overnight. So kind of just looking at what you guys would like and a timeline, that clarification would be helpful.
I think for me, moving forward, and giving you direction to use Park Development Fund for a pledge, and then, and whatever type of contracts language would need to be drafted so that we could review that at the next board meeting, I'd be comfortable with.
We've talked about parking a lot at this park, and I think that it's not pending this particular project. I think it's something that we need to work on overall. I think this serves the users that are already existing at the park. It's replacing one piece of infrastructure with a new piece of infrastructure that better serves the users of the park. So while we can direct Parks Committee and then come up through the board on, additional parking options at Bakken Park to better serve all users, I think that is a separate issue for me than moving forward from this. I don't think that this tips the scales on the parking for me because it is existing users. I would be in favor of, considering contract mutual agreement with Miracle League at the next meeting with make sure we can get our funds returned, use of Park Development Fund, and then the other legal questions of the, basically work on how that would look with Miracle League on the open bidding and such.
Right. So I do have sort of like an outline of issues we'd have to like sort of work through with Miracle League. So I can't guarantee we'd have something for the next meeting, but we'd work towards getting something. I mean, if that's the direction the board wants, we could work through this process to try to bring something back. While also, like Cameron mentioned, like there's the parking issue, but that's going to probably be a longer process.
I'm okay with supporting the project. I'm not okay with pushing things through willy-nilly. I just feel like if we're going to take on or cooperate with the Miracle Network on this project, which has the potential to bring lots of visitors into Cottage Grove, which results in supporting businesses and et cetera, I think is fantastic. But I really feel strongly that we need to plan this accordingly. So a year from now, we're not going, oh, we talked about this, but we didn't address it.
I think timeline for construction too is important, and obviously sticking with the Miracle League's timeline that they have a July 1st kind of order date, which actually is very normal in the playground world. I know we've seen that with CGS and Taylor Prairie pieces as well, where it's orders 6 months to a year in advance. Obviously, they'd have to do all of their capital fundraising, which is a big priority for them up through the end of the year, and purchasing the equipment, and then installation would happen. So I feel like that gives us a lot of time to kind of evaluate parking in the appropriate way and make sure that we are doing a good job and can give us enough data points. So I think that we can still perhaps move forward with what the ask is from the Miracle League today, and then continue our parallel discussions with parking and improvements or analysis moving forward.
My only concern is like the bigger picture. What is the all-in cost to Cottage Grove? So if we go through this and we need to modify the parking and it costs X, we don't know what that X is. And so as we talk about being good stewards, we definitely need to replace this park. I'm 100% there. I think this is a great plan, but we need to make sure it's a complete plan, and I don't feel like it is right now.
How old is that parking lot at Bakken?
I believe it was constructed in 2007, 2008, when the original soccer fields were put in.
Do you know about when it might need to be resurfaced?
3 years ago.
3 years ago, okay. I was gonna say, I was looking at the Google map and it looks a little rough.
Yeah,
so.
it looks rough, and we've been crack sealing, and I've been working with Public Works on that, so yeah, it could happen at any time.
So maybe there's an opportunity to sort of have that dovetail, and
We don't have that budgeted, right? So, I mean, these are the types of things we need to talk about. When I was over there, I didn't think it was in that bad a shape that it was imminent. I mean, I saw 5+ years left in it, but again.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
In terms of the capital prioritization process, you evaluate that and perhaps make sure that that's in for us to consider.
Yes.
Can I just add, Heidi, you asked the question about tipping the scales on parking. So here's my worldview on it. So when I went to school at UW-Whitewater, I worked for Disabled Student Services. I played on the wheelchair basketball team, and one of the things our team did is we provided respite care for parents on the weekends, so the kids could come to the university and just hang out. And so I've been around kids with disabilities, and I know that it takes a lot sometimes to mobilize all the things, especially depending on the severity of disability. And so that's why I'm concerned about parking, right? Because if you ever watch when the games are happening, you've got parents that are trying to get a kid there, they're, the supplies, the things. And so I know it's a challenge, and I don't want it to be a barrier. And so here's the fun part, right? We already have all these kids playing baseball. Then we're going to have, let's say, this amazing adaptive playground, probably one of a kind in Dane County, which is going to bring other users. So that's why I have hesitation with the parking. Looking at the map and the space, I mean, you could easily extend the pickleball parking lot and do an L shape, and I think that would suffice. It would take, I don't know what 5 is on the sheet, but it would take a little bit of field space away. But that could be a very easy solution that would make me feel better about the project. And then I would like to say also, in terms of funding, I'd prefer that the Amazon funds go to this because they wanted to do something with youth. And I think this is kind of an immediate thing that they could put their stamp on.
And I think that we can think creative, do we want to take away that field space and put in parking? Like that is a conversation we can continue to have at the Parks Committee and at the board. But then is this board prepared to tell Bill, we don't know when this parking lot will go in, so no? I mean, that is basically, what we would have staff tell Bill after this meeting. Since we don't have a parking plan, we don't know if we ever will, or if we'll ever be able to afford a parking lot. When, maybe we should ask Bill if that is a barrier for participants, or if he hears that from, get that feedback from the users of the park. Do you hear from your users that this is difficult? I mean, we see that when there's every piece of the park being utilized, but how many days in the year does that happen? And do we plan our full parking for the busiest day of the year? Or do we plan our parking for the 90% of the time of the number of users, and that 5%, we just create a plan with the users of that park on where they should be parking? And so that, by delaying here, I think that we're saying no is basically
So I have a question for you. So I'll be honest with you, I haven't been over to the park when there's Miracle League games. When I was over there and I'm looking at, there's 4 handicap spots. I mean, I got to believe there's more need for those accessibility spots. during those games, do we know how many that we need, that we don't have currently?
So are we prepared to put in, let's say there's 100 kids playing on a given night. Are we prepared to put in 100 spots? I mean, the Miracle League isn't even asking for 100 accessible spots.
I'm just asking, what is the need? Do we know? I don't even know.
So I think that we can add, in addition to Sean's directive that we've given him tonight, we can also reach out to Bill Schultz and get the user perspective on whether that's an actual need, because we don't want to make decisions here if we don't need to be making those types of decisions on behalf of them, and if it's not an actual concern.
Yeah, I mean, if during those games they don't have an issue with space, that's fine. I mean, I haven't been over there, and that's why I asked the question. And if this drives an incremental need of kids with mobility issues that require more parking, I mean, that's really the crux of the discussion is, and typically, when you're talking about, well, only 5% of the time we're at capacity, well, what happens when we're at capacity? I mean, Chief, you're gonna have cars parked along Vilas Road. Does it create a hazard? Of course it does. And so that's why we need to be cognizant of what are the needs. And I agree with you, Cindy, in the sense of we need to know from the users what are the needs and what are the shortages.
Okay. So there's direction given to Sean for what he needs to do and bring back to parks, but we need to give direction to Cameron on options for funding the requested contribution to the Miracle League project. And like Heidi said, this is a little bit of a time-sensitive issue. They do need to move forward with their planning, and we do want to give direction. I think I've heard from everyone on the board tonight that everyone really supports this and would like to see this happen in Bakken Park. And it's actually a tremendous value to Cottage Grove and to the surrounding community if we're investing $125,000 in a $1.3 million project. That's a lot of bang for your buck.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I did hear Park Development Fund. We can redirect the Amazon donation, but we don't have it. And I think there's a little bit of risk there. If that doesn't come through, we do need to give I suppose we could give you layers of how we'd like to move forward.
Yeah, I know the Amazon funds were for youth development, right? And originally it was targeted for the library. But again, I'm kind of with Paul in the sense that here's opportunity for us to use funds for its intended purpose. And this is kind of a last minute out of the blue funding request that wasn't really on the table until last week.
Yep, so Jason still hasn't given us final confirmation. So we reached out, identified this purpose, asked what the distribution process would be. So I do agree there should probably be a layered kind of motion today about what would be the village's priority here, and if for some reason, if that's the Amazon and then the second one is park development fees or vice versa, that would be appreciative direction, so we won't have to come back and say, okay, well, this isn't available, we need to figure out what to do with those funds, but also where this contribution should come from.
How much did you say was in the Park Development Fund?
So there's roughly 748 of cash, but we have about 350 committed to Shady Grove. This 125 would bring us down to just estimating about 225 to 250. So not to nothing, but relatively significant drawdown.
Is there a defined purpose in our ordinance for the Park Development Fund?
Yes, I guess that's another, thanks Chris for bringing that up. So I was giving a gross amount of funds. There are restricted funds, there's buckets. So like there's some money in there that are defined for certain areas of the village depending on what subdivision they come from. I would have to look a little bit closer about what exactly that would take the unrestricted balance to. But it would be able, the request would be able to be funded through the unrestricted.
So could we move forward with the Park Development Fund if the Amazon donation is available? The board could redirect that, but then also bypass the village so the village wouldn't be involved in the project anymore, and it would just be an Amazon direct donation, because that would eliminate other barriers. So we would essentially be
And yeah, we might get
Not a
created because
village
equipment isn't always necessary to the same restrictions as bidding requirements. So there's ways we'll let Rick and Larry work their magic.
Okay.
No promises. I'm putting them on the spot.
But I think the last thing
Yeah.
that we want to do as a board is to hinder any type of really big benefits that would come as a result of this.
So to clarify, we're just trying to give staff direction. We're going to have another opportunity to kind of say yay or nay, correct?
So Rick will come back with his appropriate documentation and information for us. Cameron, I'm assuming you would come back with
Budget amendment.
budget amendment. Sean will give us his expert opinion. He'll reach out to Bill Schultz and we'll get user information as well.
Do you think that we'll get a response from Amazon in the next 12 days or whatever before the agenda's due?
Yeah, I don't know if we will be able to get something in back. Normally they're pretty quick at getting back. This question seemed to trip it up a little bit where it's going through a couple more layers of review. And now I don't know if that's because of what was asked or if the fact that we're actually asking for potential distribution of funds that's making it take a little longer.
So this is a discuss and consider? Or no? No, we're just discussing. Keep waiting for someone to make a motion, but I guess we don't need to. I'm sorry. I'm the one like holding it up, waiting for all of you to motion something.
Yeah, so I think Cindy summarized, I guess unless anybody objects with that course of action, I think we've got enough to at least
Okay.
move forward.
Does staff feel like they have enough direction that they know what we all said tonight?
Yes.
Otherwise, just rewatch the video. Okay, let's move on to options. Camera number 2, options for communication regarding budget and transparency. He has a memo.
All right. So we are getting into the kind of the budget season. So last board meeting, we talked about both the transparency module as well as what can we do better from a communication perspective to make sure residents are aware of our budget cycles and the overlying taxing jurisdictions. This is really a kind of an overall recommendation or request. This is not a request for additional funds. These are funds that we would already have of approximately $3,500, which would support roughly a 2-page mailer or 4 total pages. I'm not saying necessarily that we have to get to 4 pages, but the request for $3,500 would be support that. Working with our overlying taxing jurisdiction to provide us information on how to give feedback. So Monona Grove has already provided some information. Madison Metropolitan Sewer District, now why that's not a tax information, that has a large impact on our communities in the form of sewer fees. So I do think that's one that I would like to get some alignment with and get some information out to the community about how to get involved. And then a couple here options here. So what finance, while this doesn't represent a financial commitment, my time and Cassie's time is a use of resources. So this would be essentially asking or outlining that, we would develop some videos to assist with the transparency site, working alongside Trustee Severson, who was semi-appointed to being kind of a little bit of a guinea pig with the transparency site and navigation of that site. And then additionally, as we're going through the launching of that process of the transparency site, kind of doing some type of, along with the mailer, kind of social media posts, that are deemed appropriate by Inga, as well as, making every time that there's a monthly update that we would do a post just to make awareness that new information is available. Kind of the next step of the budget process would be, we would at a minimum do a semi-annual update in the Village Explorer. A little plug for that, just signing up for monthly updates just around all village happenings. And then finally, we would hold some type of public information meeting, kind of like an open the books opportunity for people to come in. We'd take feedback, and then we'd summarize it and bring that feedback to the board. again, trying to find a way to make sure residents' voices are heard here at the village board level. Finally, just kind of depending on this time of year, if there's an opportunity between when the proposed budget is approved and the public hearing, which is typically a minimum of a 15-day period, some type of combination of either maybe another public information meeting or have office hours where it's a little less formal than public information, but allows residents to, if they go online, they see something, to come in and ask questions on it. Again, trying to get as much feedback. What I've found over the last 3 years is we've had no community feedback at public hearing and very minimum overall. So just looking for a way to have their voices heard, because we have heard a lot of feedback outside of the budget process. So keeping that in mind. So just looking to get overall sense of if this is what the kind of village board envisioned, and if we could continue to move forward with this process.
I love this. And so I say go for it, get it done. I'm also willing to help with videos. I like being on video. And I have a really catchy idea for you for your like meetings with citizens. You could call it Stump the Finance Director.
Ooh.
Yeah, and have people bring their questions and, you know, kind of make a little game out of it. But no, thank you for your work on this. And I say, let's get that mailer out. And, you know, I think this is a model too, to other municipalities. And I think, you know, I love involving the other districts and giving them a space to show where their information's housed. So great job.
Thank you.
Other comments for Cameron on this one?
No, I think it's great. I guess my only question is this: with the existing communication levels that we've got, and this kind of being a soft launch in a way that you'd said that before, is there a way to include this in, like, you know, this one page, or I think you're talking about 2 pages, in the municipal service or the water and sewer bills, and use the other venues that we got with the Village Explorer, with the website? You know what, you know, because you got all these things, and then you add this. Is it necessary or not? If you feel it's necessary, I totally agree. We want to launch it and we want to get it out there. But again, we have a lot of touch points, and I just didn't know if this is something that's a must-have.
I think a big concern I have with the utility bills is whether you're a landlord and you're the one paying the bill. So you have a lot of community members that don't have access to that. I do think that's an extremely valuable tool in getting information. I do think I got a lot of positive feedback on the community portal letter that was sent out. I was actually surprised how many people read mail that are sent, truly. So that was kind of what sparked the idea of potentially, you know, a physical mailer. I know we didn't mention this, but now that I'm thinking a little bit more, you know, there could be opportunities to go out in the community where there's denser areas like Drumlin and other areas where people can't get to us. You know, certainly an option to look into as well.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kay.
Thanks. I would agree this is an excellent plan. I think the best way to reach people is directly in their mailbox. So I think, you know, while it's costly, I think it's the most effective. And if we can put in plugs for the other ways that people can reach us and stay up to date, you know, with the newsletter, that would be excellent also. And unlike Trustee Severson, I do not like being on video, so please don't ask me to. But I think that, yeah, videos would be a great way for people to digest information also. Did you need a motion to move forward with this plan?
I don't, because I'm not asking for additional funds. We'll find a way to make this work within our budget.
All right. Seems like there's consensus that yes, please move forward with all things proposed. All right.
Thank you.
And then you have one more item, number 3, a budget presentation.
All right, I do have. The stranger behind us was our new comptroller. So after we did a budget amendment for this at last meeting. So Cassie joined us in January. Her joining us is really the reason why our department has the capacity to do this additional resident feedback. If you looked at the interim reports last year compared to this is a much more robust version, much more transparent version. I think it really outlines the approved projects throughout the pages. And so I'm very happy with this project. I'm also, Cassie did the lion's share of the work on this with just a high-level review. So I do appreciate all of her effort that went into the transparency module as well as this report. First and foremost, I have no concerns. After the first quarter, I think it was, for me, a roller coaster of emotions with everything that was going on the political level. Had some concerns initially in the beginning of the year on some of the effects of things that were happening on the federal level. We're very fortunate this year that a lot of our equipment and contracts were signed before any of the political things that were going on in the world. Additionally, happy to report that most, if not all, operating lines are coming at better or at expected levels. So with that, I'm not gonna go over, because this is a 58-page document, I'm going to allow the board to ask questions if there are no questions. Again, this will be eventually out on our website for the community to ask questions on. But again, a lot of time and effort were spent specifically on the capital projects pages, as well as the utilities, to provide some additional context.
It's an amazing document. Thank you.
Thank you.
It really is. I just had one oddball question. Like the intergovernmental aid, I'm assuming that's a timing question. We've gotten a little over 10% of the budget of $1 million in 25% of the year. I'm assuming it's timing, right?
Yeah, so about 85% of our aid is actually received in November. So that's the real struggle governments have. I think a lot of people will look at and be like, gosh, you have $2 million of reserves. Like, what could you possibly need that for? Really, that's weathering the big storms of in between major funds. Additionally, we have to remember, while the general fund can sometimes look really well, sometimes we will hold off on issuing debt and weather some of that storm to save money. So we can lean on the general fund to some extent because we still have cash in our bank account, but it allows us to save several months of interest on a possible big borrowing. And then the utilities, this has greatly improved our flexibility, but at once upon a time it was quarterly that we were doing billing, which had massive dips in cash to the extent that the water utility especially was heavily relying on the general fund. After going to monthly billing, that has significantly helped us and allows us to be a little bit more flexible here going forward with our general fund.
The negative trends, finding part-time, seasonal, and volunteer help, perhaps that is something that could be included on the 4 pages that will be mailed out.
Yeah, and I just, the reason why I bring that up is we're just seeing, when you're finding, and Ingo probably could speak to this a little bit better, there's a couple ways to incentivize part-time. You can either increase the wages or really have a strong culture. And we have a very strong culture, especially in the volunteers that help with the Parks and Rec programs and the seasonal for the athletic fields. And so, but at the same time, as I'm mentioning, EMS and fire are struggling to find volunteers with the kind of the load that we have. So this is just a kind of, out of anything that's going to happen in a 5-year trend, this is going to be a cost driver. Seasonal help, part-time help. We're fighting for less and less resources.
Any other questions for Cameron? All right. To move on then to communication and miscellaneous business. Consider approval of vouchers is first. Bills list is linked in the agenda. Questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the bills as presented.
And I'll second.
Motion by Dahl, second by Murphy. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Correspondence. We received several emails. Maybe someone came over the weekend. I think I got them all today for the candidates and also the parks that was discussed tonight. Does anyone else have any Oh, and I guess I'll mention that Renee, Heidi, and I also went to the Dane County Cities and Villages annual meeting, which was in Cottage Grove, and we hosted them. And we got a lot of really nice feedback from other municipalities that came to Cottage Grove, and good feedback about our staff and about our cute little village.
I just wanted to point out that Paul and I would have gone to that, but we were at Public Works.
Just a quick, I guess, point of order or point of information question on correspondence, because I know people emailing us expecting correspondence to be read at the meetings. And so I don't know if there's guidance, if we have a policy or that sort of thing. I feel bad that some people expected their stuff to be read because I thought we couldn't. So
So Rick, maybe you can talk about the wish to speak form versus emailing the board versus coming
So I think the correspondence, generally what our guidance is, because it all goes to the board, right? So you all see it regardless. Our fear about reading word for word correspondence is that it's taken out of context. So people will just say it's read at the meeting, but then it's quoted as Cindy saying it, or a board member saying it verbatim as this is coming from them. So that's why we generally say you can mention that the board received correspondence. If you want to summarize it, you can, but our guidance is generally don't read it word for word. So that's coming from us. So I understand the point though about people wanting that knowing that their emails are read, but generally when an email is sent to the board, you're all seeing it regardless. It's part of the record, I guess, if you want to call it that. So when there are public hearings, that's all considered part of the record. So it's not like it's being ignored, it's just not read in public.
This has come up quite a bit before. And I do wonder maybe staff could just take a look at the website too, where it has our contact information and the wish to speak forms, and maybe just a couple sentences about how these tools are used and what they mean. Maybe it would just help residents too when they want to either email us or fill out a wish to speak form and have it stated into the record. So I don't know, Matt, can you take that bit of feedback, or Inga?
And
she's
even
been working
maybe
on a lot of websites.
just a reminder or some little, if there's empty space in our 4-page mailer that's going out, how to, you know what I mean? How to contact the board or something. I don't know. I just felt bad because I didn't think we could do it based on that. But so I would love for citizens to know that.
Any other correspondence? Was there a new municipality magazine that you need to give a plug for?
No, but I did pass along at the Dane County Cities and Villages to the league representatives that were there that I very much enjoy their magazine and promote it to all of my colleagues. So yes, I'll take that opportunity to put a plug in again.
Trustee Murphy. Community events at 10 a.m. at Town Hall. There is a Memorial Day recognition event. I know I can't make it, but the offer is extended to everyone, including the public. Other community events coming up in the next couple of weeks. Okay. Otherwise, future agenda items, I cannot read my handwriting. I have feedback on something. Do we have? There was a discussion about the MPO grants and coming back with that. I did hear, and I have it on my list, to take a look at Mr. Spahouse's committee assignments and see if there's some wiggle room to maybe for me to bring that back to the village board at the next meeting. And contacting commercial businesses about truck traffic was another, also I guess that's just a note for myself, but that's on my future to-do list, not necessarily agenda. Cameron?
Yeah, just discuss and consider providing town feedback for direction of ESB building and possible satellite station.
I think that's what my scribble is. Yes. Other agenda item, future agenda items?
Parks can bring the parking situation, and then I can update the board with our discussion there.
Okay. So that we are not in need of a closed session, so we can skip 12 and 13, so that moves us to number 14, adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Murphy, second by Severson, non-debatable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks all.